Welcome to Eat Sleep Crime. I am Jack Wilson, and I'll be your host for tonight. As the rain falls gently outside, relax your mind, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and sink into the shadows of today's true crime story. There is nothing to fear. At least not right now. Sleep well, if you can. The first inkling of something amiss wasn't a scream, a shattered window, or a flashing police light. It was the absence of something small, something seemingly inconsequential. A handwritten love note. It vanished from Mrs. Eleanor Vance's mailbox, a pristine white box nestled amongst a row of identical boxes lining Harmony Creek's meticulously maintained cul-de-sac. Harmony Creek, Pennsylvania, boasted the kind of postcard-perfect charm that real estate agents dreamt of. Sprawling colonial houses with perfectly manicured lawns, overflowing flower beds that exploded with color, and the gentle hum of contented suburban life. Children rode bikes on tree-lined streets, their laughter echoing against the backdrop of chirping birds and the distant drone of lawnmowers. It was the kind of place where secrets were supposed to stay buried, where the worst thing that happened was a misplaced garden gnome. But Mrs. Vance's missing note, a delicate piece of stationery adorned with forget-me-nots, was a crack in the facade, an unforeseen fissure in the idyllic landscape. It wasn't a robbery. Nothing else was missing. It wasn't vandalism. The note simply vanished. Mrs. Vance, a woman whose life revolved around the precise arrangement of her hydrangeas and the timely arrival of her afternoon tea, was initially more flustered than alarmed. She assumed a mischievous grandchild had snagged it, a fleeting moment of childish curiosity. She mentioned it casually to her neighbor, Margaret, during their usual morning exchange of pleasantries over perfectly sculpted hedges. However, it was Silas, the postman, who noticed the pattern. Silas wasn't a man known for his flamboyant personality or keen interest in gossip. He was a creature of habit, a man whose world revolved around the precise route of his mail delivery. He knew the rhythm of Harmony Creek, the cadence of its lives, as intimately as he knew the address of each house on his route. He was the silent observer, the unseen chronicler of the town's daily rituals, a man who measured time by the weight of his mailbag and the satisfying thud of each letter dropped into its designated box. He noticed the subtle irregularities, the increasingly noticeable gaps where letters should have been. At first, it was just the occasional absence, easily dismissed as an oversight. But over the next few weeks, the disappearances grew more frequent, more deliberate. It started with the trivial, a friendly invitation, a supermarket coupon, a child's crayon drawing. Then things became progressively unsettling. A carefully worded apology from a husband to his wife, a poignant confession from a teenager wrestling with a secret crush, a desperate plea for forgiveness penned in shaky handwriting. These weren't just pieces of mail. They were fragments of lives, intimate snippets of emotion laid bare on paper. Their absence was a stark reminder of the unseen currents, the hidden tensions, the unspoken truths simmering beneath Harmony Creek's placid surface. The initial amusement had faded, replaced by a growing sense of unease that spread through the community like a silent epidemic. Whispers replaced polite conversations. Casual glances morphed into suspicious stares. The idyllic streets, once echoing with laughter and friendly greetings, now felt charged with an unsettling quiet, punctuated only by the rustle of leaves and the anxious beat of hearts. The once vibrant community meetings, once marked by light-hearted chatter and shared gossip, now resembled anxious gatherings, fueled by fear and mounting speculation. The usually cheerful chatter was replaced by hushed tones and sideways glances, each resident becoming a potential suspect in this increasingly disturbing mystery. The police chief, a seasoned veteran named Robert Miller, initially brushed off the disappearances as a prank, a harmless curiosity, a quirky aberration in their otherwise unremarkable lives. He was a man who valued routine and stability, a man who preferred dealing with fender benders and minor property disputes to anything that hinted at the macabre. He harbored a deep-seated belief in the fundamental goodness of his community and the innate decency of its inhabitants. The notion that something truly sinister was afoot in Harmony Creek was a concept he found uncomfortable, even repugnant. However, even Chief Miller found it increasingly difficult to dismiss the disappearances as mere mischief as the frequency and the nature of the missing letters continued to escalate. The town's air was growing thick with suspicion, with fear as palpable as the crisp autumn leaves that crunched underfoot. The once vibrant, friendly community had become a place where neighbors eyed each other with distrust, where friendly waves were replaced by guarded silence. Then came the night that shattered the fragile peace of Harmony Creek forever. The night that transformed a seemingly innocuous mystery into a chilling nightmare. The night that brought an abrupt, brutal end to the quiet life of Sarah Miller. Sarah, a bright-eyed 16-year-old with a contagious laugh and a penchant for writing poetry, was found lifeless in her family's backyard, her body arranged in a macabre tableau that mirrored the unspoken words of a letter she had written but never mailed. A letter that detailed a secret she had desperately tried to keep hidden. A secret that now lay exposed in the chillingly accurate positioning of her lifeless form. The discovery of Sarah's body sent a wave of shock and terror through the town. The picturesque setting, once a source of pride and contentment, was now irrevocably stained with the grotesque reality of violence. The meticulously manicured lawns, once a symbol of order and tranquility, were now eerily silent, devoid of the laughter and carefree play that had once characterized Harmony Creek. The beautiful houses, once sources of comfort and security, now seemed menacing, hiding secrets behind their pristine facades, each window a potential eye peering into the darkness. The police investigation into Sarah's death yielded little in the way of concrete evidence. There were no witnesses, no forced entry, no clear motive. The only tangible link to the case was the missing letter, a haunting echo of Sarah's unspoken fears and desires, now tragically transformed into a blueprint for her murder. Chief Miller, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in the nature of the mystery, found himself staring into an abyss of unanswered questions, grappling with a level of darkness that was far beyond his previous experience. The jovial, trusting atmosphere of Harmony Creek was replaced with an unsettling undercurrent of fear, suspicion, and paranoia. Every neighbor was now a potential suspect, each friendly face concealing a possible motive. In the eerie silence, the unsettling pattern became increasingly clear. Someone was not only reading their secrets, but was enacting them, turning the intimate confessions of Harmony Creek into terrifying, deadly performances. The once idyllic town was now a stage, and its unsuspecting residents were both the actors and the victims in a macabre play orchestrated by a mysterious, unseen hand. The idyllic charm had been shattered, revealing a sinister heart beneath the surface. The game had begun, and no one in Harmony Creek was safe. The missing letters were no longer a matter of misplaced stationery. They were becoming a chilling chronicle of Harmony Creek's unspoken anxieties. Mrs. Gable's heartfelt apology to her estranged daughter, a crumpled note filled with regret and the promise of a mended relationship, vanished without a trace. Then came young Timmy Olson's confession, a childish scrawl detailing a stolen cookie from the community bake sale, a transgression he had hoped to keep secret from his overbearing mother. Each disappearance chipped away at the town's veneer of perfection, revealing the raw nerve endings of its collective unconscious. Margaret, Mrs. Vance's neighbor, found herself increasingly agitated. The meticulous order she maintained in her life was crumbling, mirroring the unraveling of Harmony Creek itself. The perfectly aligned petunias in her flower beds seemed to mock the chaos that had descended upon their community. She found herself scrutinizing every face, every shadow, searching for a sign, a clue, a flicker of recognition in the eyes of her neighbors that might explain this inexplicable phenomenon. The casual morning chats over hedges were replaced by strained silences, punctuated only by the nervous chirping of crickets. The whispers started subtly, like the rustling of autumn leaves. At first, it was a hushed conversation overheard at the grocery store, then a furtive glance exchanged across the street, and soon, the entire town was consumed by a murmuring tide of speculation and suspicion. The once vibrant community meetings, usually filled with the jovial chatter of neighbors discussing bake sales and school events, were now tense, strained affairs filled with anxious glances and hushed conversations. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, each resident a potential suspect in this ever-escalating mystery. Silas, the postman, became a reluctant focal point. His meticulous routine, once a source of comfort and predictability, was now a constant reminder of the town's unraveling. He had become a silent witness to the disintegration of Harmony Creek, a man bearing the weight of the town's secrets in his increasingly lighter mailbag. He found himself unable to shake the feeling that he was being watched, observed, his every move scrutinized. The familiar faces of his neighbors, once friendly and approachable, now seemed distant, suspicious, their eyes heavy with a silent judgment. Chief Miller, initially dismissive, found himself caught in a whirlwind. The number of missing letters was growing exponentially, and the nature of the missing correspondence was becoming increasingly disturbing. It was no longer just trivial notes. Now, they were the very fabric of their lives, revealing intimate vulnerabilities and carefully guarded secrets. He was forced to acknowledge that this was no longer a prank. It was something far more sinister, something that threatened the very core of Harmony Creek's existence. The chief's initial skepticism morphed into a growing unease. He was a man of routine, a man who thrived on order and predictability. But the very foundations of his town were now shifting beneath his feet, leaving him feeling adrift in a sea of unanswered questions. The once comforting familiarity of Harmony Creek was now a source of anxiety. Each house, each friendly face, held a potential secret, a hidden motive. The serene landscapes now seemed menacing, hiding sinister truths behind their perfect facade. He started his own discreet investigation, poring over missing person reports and scrutinizing any unusual activity within the town. The initial focus on children's letters had shifted dramatically. Now, grown men and women found their most intimate confessions stolen from their mailboxes. Confessions they'd never dare utter aloud. A husband's hushed admission of infidelity, a wife's private struggle with depression, a teenager's desperate cry for help. All were gone, swallowed by the quiet, suffocating silence that now draped over Harmony Creek. The stolen letters had become a twisted tapestry of the community's hidden lives, a macabre mosaic woven from their deepest fears and desires. Chief Miller found himself wrestling with the uncomfortable reality that someone within Harmony Creek possessed a chilling knowledge of their neighbors' lives, a knowledge far exceeding anything that could be obtained through casual observation. The thefts were not random. They were targeted, deliberate, a perverse form of surveillance that had transformed the idyllic town into a silent stage for a horrifying drama. His own daughter, Sarah, had been a budding poet, her words capturing the youthful exuberance and vulnerability of her age. She had a habit of writing poems and letters filled with her thoughts and feelings, then tucking them away in her desk, often forgetting to mail them. The chief now found himself agonizing over the possibility that she, too, had been a victim of this sinister game, her words snatched and her secrets potentially leveraged against her. The thought chilled him to the bone. The once open communication among residents dwindled to barely audible whispers. The town's famous annual summer barbecue became a strained affair, marked by awkward silences and suspicious glances. The laughter and jovial conversations that had once characterized these gatherings were replaced by a chilling quiet, broken only by the nervous clinking of glasses and the rustling of papers. Even the children seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere, their carefree play muted, replaced by an unnatural quietude. The sense of community, the bedrock of Harmony Creek's identity, had crumbled under the weight of fear and suspicion. Neighbors who had once shared barbecues and holiday festivities now eyed each other with distrust, their friendly conversations replaced by strained silences. The vibrant social fabric of the town had been shredded, leaving behind a community fractured by paranoia and fear. Each day that passed brought new disappearances, each stolen letter chipping away at the town's collective sense of security. The idyllic facade was crumbling, revealing a darkness that had always been present, but had remained hidden beneath the surface of polite conversation and manicured lawns. Chief Miller, weighed down by his growing sense of failure, found himself wrestling with the terrifying reality of a crime that seemed to be playing out not in the shadows, but in the full glare of the community's unsuspecting eyes. The disappearance of the letters was no longer just a mystery. It was a testament to the hidden vulnerabilities of Harmony Creek's inhabitants, and the chilling capacity of someone among them to exploit those vulnerabilities. It was a chilling game of cat and mouse, where the cat was unseen, its motivations unknown, its power absolute, transforming the lives of the town's inhabitants into a macabre play. And Chief Miller, the town's protector, found himself increasingly powerless in the face of its escalating horror. The idyllic dream of Harmony Creek had turned into a nightmarish reality. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the meticulously manicured lawn of the Miller household, a stark contrast to the grim scene unfolding in the heart of their backyard. Chief Miller knelt beside his daughter, Sarah, her lifeless body sprawled amidst the vibrant blooms of her mother's prize-winning rose bushes. The roses, a riot of crimson and pink, seemed to mock the brutality of the scene, their delicate petals a fragile counterpoint to the harsh reality of death. Sarah, all of 17, lay still, her youthful face frozen in a rictus of terror. Her once bright eyes, usually sparkling with mischief and intelligence, were now dull and lifeless, staring blankly at the sky. Her blonde hair, usually so meticulously braided, lay scattered around her head, a halo of tangled gold against the emerald green of the grass. The pristine white dress she wore, a gift from her grandmother, was stained crimson, the color a stark reminder of the lifeblood that had been cruelly spilled. The position of her body was unnatural, almost posed. Her arms were outstretched, her fingers delicately curled as if she were reaching for something, a posture eerily reminiscent of a dancer caught mid-flight. The unsettling precision of her placement, the almost balletic elegance of her death, sent a chill down Chief Miller's spine. It wasn't the random violence of a crazed assailant. It felt calculated, deliberate, as if orchestrated by a mind both cruel and artistic. The initial shock gave way to a chilling realization. Sarah had been a budding poet, her words often filled with a raw, emotional intensity that belied her age. She had a habit of scribbling her thoughts and feelings onto scraps of paper, often crafting vivid imagery, even describing physical poses and gestures in her poems. She'd keep them hidden, tucked away in her desk drawer, occasionally forgetting to mail or even finish them. The chief recalled one particular poem, one he had stumbled upon during one of his rare forays into her room. A poem detailing a young woman lying amidst roses, her arms outstretched, her fingers gently curled, mirroring the grotesque tableau before him now. A strangled sob escaped Chief Miller's lips. He couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that this wasn't just a random act of violence. It was a perverse imitation of his daughter's own words, a macabre enactment of her hidden creative visions. This was no ordinary murder, it was a twisted performance, a macabre play staged within the heart of their seemingly idyllic community. The crime scene was meticulously documented. The forensic team, their faces grim and professional, moved with a practiced efficiency that both comforted and horrified Chief Miller. Each photograph, each piece of evidence collected, served as a painful reminder of his failure as a father, as a protector. He had been so consumed by the escalating mystery of the vanishing letters that he had overlooked the very real danger that lurked within his own home. The initial investigation yielded little. There were no signs of forced entry, no witnesses, no clear motive. The idyllic facade of Harmony Creek, already fractured by the mystery of the missing mail, now crumbled further under the weight of this devastating tragedy. The town, once so vibrant and full of life, was now shrouded in a pall of fear and grief. The whispers that had begun with the missing letters now intensified, their volume amplified by the shock of Sarah's death. Accusations flew like poisoned darts, each resident a potential suspect in the minds of their increasingly paranoid neighbors. The once friendly chats over garden fences were replaced by strained silences, broken only by the nervous chirping of crickets, a soundtrack to the town's collective unease. Silas, the postman, became even more of an unwitting target. His daily route, once a predictable rhythm in the life of Harmony Creek, now felt like a dangerous game of chance. The weight of the town's secrets, already heavy in his mailbag, now pressed down on him with crushing force. Every shadow seemed menacing, every friendly face now held a potential darkness. His meticulous routine, once a source of comfort, was now a constant reminder of his own vulnerability. Even Margaret, known for her unwavering composure and perfectly aligned petunias, found herself consumed by a debilitating fear. The order she had meticulously maintained in her life was shattered, mirroring the unraveling of Harmony Creek itself. She spent her days peering through her lace-curtained windows, scrutinizing every movement, every face in the street, searching for a glimpse of the predator that had invaded their once safe haven. Chief Miller, burdened by grief and guilt, threw himself into the investigation with a ferocious intensity. He worked tirelessly, poring over Sarah's belongings, searching for any clue, any hint that might shed light on her killer's identity. He revisited her poems, her unfinished drafts, her sketches, looking for a hidden message, a cryptic clue, something that could connect her death to the missing letters. He started to see patterns, a recurring motif of roses, a certain style of handwriting, a peculiar choice of words that seemed to echo the chilling precision of her death. As he delved deeper into his daughter's life, he uncovered a hidden world, a secret life unknown even to him. Sarah's journal, tucked away in the bottom drawer of her desk, revealed a depth of emotion, a level of vulnerability that he had never fully understood. She had been struggling, wrestling with anxieties and uncertainties he had never suspected. The journals also revealed details of secret meetings with people from outside town, mysterious pen pals, and hushed exchanges of letters whose contents seemed to be far beyond her years. The investigation expanded beyond the confines of Harmony Creek. Chief Miller contacted neighboring towns, sharing information about Sarah's death and the ongoing mystery of the missing letters. He began to realize that this wasn't just a local phenomenon. It was something much larger, something more sinister, with potential links to organized crime rings specializing in the theft of sensitive personal information and the black market trade in blackmail. He discovered that Sarah had been involved in an online community for young poets and writers, a virtual world where she freely shared her deepest thoughts and emotions. This online presence offered the possibility of new leads and suspects, expanding the investigation into the vast and untraceable realm of the internet. The hours turned into days, the days into weeks, but the mystery of Sarah's death remained unsolved. The idyllic dream of Harmony Creek had transformed into a nightmarish reality, a town suffocated by fear, suspicion, and the ever-present specter of death. Chief Miller, overwhelmed by grief, guilt, and the growing weight of his failure, found himself trapped in a labyrinth of unanswered questions, searching for a truth that seemed to slip away with every passing hour. His daughter's murder was not just a personal tragedy. It was the culmination of a long-brewing darkness that threatened to consume Harmony Creek entirely. The missing letters were no longer just a puzzle. They were a deadly clue, a twisted roadmap leading to a murderer hidden in plain sight. And the once peaceful Harmony Creek was now a stage set for a chilling game of cat and mouse, where the stakes were life itself. The initial shock of Sarah's death had rippled through Harmony Creek like a seismic wave, shattering the town's carefully constructed facade of tranquility. The whispers that had accompanied the vanishing letters now roared, morphing into accusations hurled across freshly tilled gardens and through tightly shut windows. Chief Miller, still reeling from the loss of his daughter, found himself battling not only the grief, but also the growing suspicion that festered within his own community. Silas, the postman, felt the weight of the town's collective gaze upon him. His daily route, once a comforting routine, now felt like navigating a minefield. He'd always prided himself on his punctuality, his methodical approach to delivering the mail, a routine as predictable as the sunrise. Now, every missed delivery, every slightly delayed route, every fleeting encounter with a resident felt charged with a new, sinister significance. The townsfolk, once friendly, now regarded him with a mixture of pity and suspicion, their eyes searching his face for answers he didn't possess. Margaret, the town's resident perfectionist, with her prize-winning petunias and impeccably organized life, found her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The once comforting routine of tending her flowers had become a source of anxiety. Each bloom felt fragile, reflecting the fragility of her own peace of mind. She now saw the world through the lens of suspicion, every shadow a potential threat, every neighbor a possible culprit. Her perfectly aligned petunias stood in stark contrast to the chaos that now reigned in her heart. The list of potential suspects grew with each passing day. There was old Mr. Abernethy, the recluse who lived on the edge of town, his house shrouded in an overgrown thicket, rumored to have a dark past and an even darker temperament. His solitary existence, once a quirky eccentricity, now seemed sinister, his seclusion breeding suspicion. Then there was young Timmy Jenkins, whose troubled family history had already made him an outcast. His sullen demeanor and penchant for wandering the woods at night cast a shadow of doubt upon him, feeding the town's growing paranoia. Even within the Miller family, suspicion cast its long shadow. Sarah's younger brother, David, a quiet and introspective young man, became a target of unspoken accusations. His close relationship with his sister, coupled with his own quiet unhappiness, made him a potential suspect in the minds of some. The weight of suspicion, coupled with the overwhelming grief, threatened to crush him. Chief Miller, consumed by grief and guilt, found himself fighting the insidious whispers that aimed to engulf even his own family. The investigation expanded beyond the immediate circle of suspects. A stranger, known only as the Drifter, was spotted around Harmony Creek in the weeks leading up to Sarah's death. This individual, a gaunt figure with piercing eyes and a mysterious past, was described by several witnesses as lurking near the Miller residence on several occasions. His presence, coupled with his inability to provide a concrete alibi, added a new layer of complexity to an already tangled investigation. Chief Miller, fueled by a desperate need for justice, meticulously investigated each lead. He revisited Sarah's poems and journals, looking for clues for hidden messages. He spoke to Sarah's friends and teachers, trying to piece together a picture of her final days, searching for any hints of trouble, of threats, of hidden enemies. He delved into the online forums and communities Sarah frequented, navigating the digital underbelly of the internet, searching for hidden connections and potential suspects. As the investigation progressed, a pattern began to emerge. Many of the missing letters were addressed to individuals who shared a common thread. They were all involved in some form of sensitive information handling: lawyers, bankers, doctors. Their names appeared in Sarah's notebooks, handwritten alongside cryptic messages that resembled ciphers. This realization shifted the focus of the investigation from local suspects to a possible broader conspiracy involving the theft and blackmail of personal information. The vanishing letters were no longer just a local mystery. They were part of a much larger criminal enterprise. The once peaceful Harmony Creek was now divided, its community spirit fractured along lines of suspicion and distrust. Friends turned on friends, neighbors eyed each other with hostility, and the idyllic facade of the town crumbled under the weight of the unsolved mystery. The shadow of Sarah's death hung heavy over everything, casting a pall of fear that threatened to consume the very heart of the community. Chief Miller, exhausted but undeterred, continued his relentless pursuit of justice, knowing that the only way to bring peace back to Harmony Creek was to uncover the truth, no matter how dark it may be. He had to find out who had silenced his daughter's voice, who had turned their seemingly idyllic town into a stage for a macabre performance, and who had transformed the simple act of delivering mail into a deadly game of secrets and lies. The clock was ticking, and with each passing day, the truth seemed to slip further away. The investigation led Chief Miller down a rabbit hole of encrypted messages, coded symbols, and anonymous online exchanges. He discovered Sarah had been far more involved in the online poetry community than he had initially realized. It wasn't just a creative outlet. It was a secret world of clandestine communications, hidden identities, and anonymous exchanges that blurred the lines between reality and fantasy. Sarah's online persona, crafted with meticulous care, revealed a depth of intelligence and sophistication that shocked even her father. She seemed to have been playing a dangerous game, a game she ultimately paid the ultimate price for. Among Sarah's digital belongings, Chief Miller uncovered a series of encrypted messages, seemingly exchanged with a mysterious online contact. He brought in specialists from the State Police Cybercrimes Unit, who worked tirelessly to decipher the code. The messages revealed a network of individuals involved in the theft of personal data, a sophisticated operation spanning multiple states. They were using the Harmony Creek mail system as a cover, a seemingly innocuous delivery route masking a far more sinister enterprise. The missing letters were not just letters, but sensitive documents containing compromising information, traded in the shadowy corners of the dark web. The case took an unexpected turn when the Cybercrimes Unit identified one of Sarah's online contacts as Dr. Elias Thorne, a respected psychiatrist with a practice in a neighboring town. Thorne was known for his work with high-profile clients, individuals whose lives were under constant scrutiny. The possibility that Sarah had stumbled upon something far bigger than the local mystery of the missing letters began to dawn on Chief Miller. The encrypted messages pointed to a conspiracy of astonishing scope and terrifying implications. Thorne's seemingly impeccable reputation came under intense scrutiny. The police uncovered a trail of suspicious financial transactions, hinting at a connection to the shadowy online network involved in data theft and blackmail. Thorne was known for his discreet nature, his ability to maintain a professional distance, making him the perfect conduit for handling sensitive information. But beneath the surface of his polished exterior, a different picture began to emerge. As the investigation intensified, Chief Miller faced resistance from within the community. Some residents, weary of the constant scrutiny and accusations, began to rally behind Thorne, dismissing the evidence against him as mere speculation. The once united community of Harmony Creek was deeply fractured, its trust eroded by suspicion and fear. Chief Miller's commitment to justice was tested as the line between pursuer and pursued began to blur. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. David, Sarah's brother. Haunted by guilt and unable to bear the weight of his unspoken anxieties, he confessed that he had accidentally discovered Sarah's involvement with the online network and her attempts to expose its activities. He found one of the encrypted messages, an angry outburst from an anonymous sender threatening Sarah with dire consequences if she continued her investigations. David's realization confirmed Chief Miller's suspicions and closed the loop. The anonymous sender was Dr. Thorne. He had silenced Sarah to protect his criminal network. The arrest of Dr. Elias Thorne sent shockwaves through Harmony Creek. His downfall shattered the town's carefully constructed illusion of perfection, exposing the dark underbelly that had festered beneath the surface. The truth was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined, a chilling reminder that evil could lurk beneath the surface of even the most idyllic communities. With Thorne's arrest, the mystery of the vanishing letters and Sarah's death were finally resolved, bringing a measure of closure to Chief Miller, but the scars remained on Harmony Creek, a permanent reminder of the darkness that had threatened to consume their peaceful haven. The community began the long and difficult process of healing, slowly rebuilding trust and attempting to reclaim the tranquility that had been stolen from them. However, the memory of the vanishing letters and Sarah's tragic fate lingered, a constant reminder of the shadows that lie hidden in even the most seemingly perfect places. The arrival of Detective Isabella Izzy Diaz in Harmony Creek was as jarring as a discordant note in a perfectly orchestrated symphony. Her tailored suit, a stark contrast to the town's casual attire, and her city-slicker demeanor cut through the rural charm like a knife through butter. Chief Miller, still bearing the weight of his grief and the town's collective suspicion, watched her from his office window as she stepped out of the unmarked police car, her movements precise and purposeful. The arrival of an outside investigator, especially one with the reputation of Izzy Diaz, spoke volumes about the gravity of the situation. Harmony Creek, with its idyllic facade and its carefully guarded secrets, was no longer a local affair. Diaz, a veteran detective from the Philadelphia Police Department, wasn't known for her small-town charm. She was renowned for her sharp intuition, her unflinching gaze, and her ability to dissect the human psyche with the precision of a surgeon. Her colleagues whispered of her uncanny ability to read people, to see beyond the masks they wore, and to find the truth hidden beneath the surface. She tackled complex cases involving serial killers, organized crime syndicates, and political corruption, and her success rate was legendary. But it was her understanding of the psychology of criminals, her ability to get inside their heads, that set her apart. She wasn't just looking for evidence. She was hunting for motive, for the underlying reasons behind the seemingly senseless acts. Chief Miller had initially resisted bringing in an outside investigator, clinging to the hope of solving the case within the confines of his own small town. But as the investigation had progressed, he'd found himself hopelessly entangled in a web of local politics, personal biases, and unanswered questions. The vanishing letters, far from being a simple mystery, seemed to be part of a larger, more sinister plot. The state police, overwhelmed by the complexities of the case, had recommended Diaz, and Miller, knowing he was out of his depth, had reluctantly agreed. Diaz's initial briefing with Chief Miller was brief and to the point. She didn't waste time on pleasantries or small talk. She wanted facts, leads, anything that could shed light on the disappearances. She devoured Miller's investigative files, her keen eyes scanning documents, photographs, and witness statements with an intensity that made the chief feel slightly uncomfortable. She posed incisive questions, challenging his assumptions and demanding clarification on points he had previously overlooked. The subtle skepticism in her voice, though carefully veiled, was palpable. Her approach wasn't about finding the most obvious culprit. It was about understanding the motive. She focused on the patterns, on the seemingly random disappearances of letters, scrutinizing the addresses, the contents, where available, and the timing of each incident. She noted that the missing letters weren't addressed to random individuals. They were carefully selected, each recipient involved in some form of sensitive information handling: lawyers, bankers, doctors, and even a few high-profile politicians. This wasn't the work of a random thief or a disgruntled postman. It was calculated, deliberate, and suggested a level of planning and sophistication that went far beyond anything Miller had considered. Diaz began to build profiles of the recipients, delving into their personal and professional lives, searching for any common thread, any connection that might link them together. She examined their financial records, their social networks, and their past interactions, hoping to unearth any compromising information that might have been contained in the missing letters. She hired a specialist in cryptography to help decipher some of the cryptic messages found in Sarah Miller's notebooks, messages that seemed to have been written to one of the recipients. The investigation soon led her to Sarah Miller's life. Diaz spent hours interviewing Sarah's friends, teachers, and classmates. She studied Sarah's poetry, her journals, and her online presence, meticulously piecing together a picture of the young woman who had become the heart of this inexplicable mystery. Sarah's poetry, previously dismissed as adolescent ramblings, now took on a new significance. The metaphors, the veiled allusions, the cryptic imagery, they seemed to contain clues, hints of a secret life, a hidden conflict that might be connected to the missing letters. Diaz was particularly interested in Sarah's online activity. Sarah had been a prolific member of several online poetry communities, often using pseudonyms and engaging in encrypted conversations. Diaz realized that Sarah wasn't just a budding poet. She'd been an active participant in a virtual world that existed outside the confines of Harmony Creek, a world of anonymity and secrecy where hidden identities and encrypted messages were the norm. The digital breadcrumbs left behind by Sarah led Diaz down a winding path, uncovering a network of individuals connected by a common thread: their involvement in sensitive information handling. She traced Sarah's online interactions, meticulously reconstructing her digital footprint. She unearthed a series of cryptic messages exchanged with an unknown contact, a clandestine conversation that seemed to be about blackmail, threats, and a clandestine network dealing in sensitive personal information. The conversation suggested Sarah had stumbled upon something far more sinister than a local mail theft. She had unknowingly become entangled in a web of conspiracy and deceit, and in uncovering the truth, had paid the ultimate price. As the investigation delved deeper, Diaz discovered the missing letters were not mere correspondence. They were a carefully curated selection of sensitive documents, each containing information that could ruin reputations, destroy careers, and even threaten lives. The recipients were targets, chosen for their influence, their wealth, or the secrets they held. The missing letters weren't just a mystery. They were a highly organized and lucrative blackmail operation disguised within the routine of the Harmony Creek Postal Service. The seemingly idyllic community of Harmony Creek began to unravel under the weight of Diaz's investigation. The perfect facade of friendly neighbors and welcoming smiles crumbled, replaced by suspicion, fear, and a simmering resentment towards the detective who was tearing apart their peaceful existence. The lines between neighbor and suspect blurred. Everyone seemed to be hiding something, guarding secrets that were tightly woven into the very fabric of their lives. Diaz, undeterred, continued her relentless pursuit of truth, knowing that only by uncovering the darkness that had seeped into Harmony Creek could she bring justice to Sarah Miller and restore a semblance of peace to the community. Her city-hardened heart, however, remained untouched by the small-town charm. Her focus was solely on uncovering the truth, no matter the cost. The clock was ticking, and Diaz knew time was running out. Secrets Diaz's investigation shifted gears. The immediate focus on the missing letters, while crucial, now felt like only one piece of a far larger puzzle. Harmony Creek, with its deceptively serene exterior, was hiding something far older, far deeper than the recent disappearances. She needed to understand the town's history, its undercurrents of resentment, its buried secrets. The idyllic facade was a carefully constructed mask, and Diaz was determined to rip it off. Her first stop was the Harmony Creek Historical Society, a quaint little building tucked away on a quiet side street. Inside, stacks of yellowed newspapers, dusty photographs, and brittle documents chronicled the town's past. Archivist Mrs. Elara Finch, a woman whose age seemed as deep-rooted as the town's history itself, welcomed her with a wary politeness, her eyes holding a hint of suspicion. Diaz, armed with her charm and an unwavering persistence, began to sift through the archives. The initial years were uneventful, filled with accounts of harvest festivals, church picnics, and the occasional petty dispute. But as she delved deeper, a pattern emerged. The early records were meticulous, detailed, and almost overly precise. Then, starting around the 1950s, the records became sparse, almost deliberately vague. Important events were glossed over, details omitted, and significant names consistently absent. It was as though someone, or some group, had deliberately tried to erase parts of Harmony Creek's history. Diaz discovered articles hinting at past scandals, a hushed-up land dispute, a controversial business deal, and a series of unsolved disappearances dating back to the early 20th century. These weren't just isolated incidents. They formed a recurring theme, a pattern of secrecy and suppression that had been woven into the fabric of the town for generations. One faded newspaper clipping caught her attention. It detailed a bitter feud between two prominent families, the Millers and the Ashworths, over a significant piece of land bordering the town. The article spoke of broken promises, fraudulent deeds, and accusations of blackmail. The case was eventually settled out of court, the details shrouded in secrecy. But the lingering resentment Diaz sensed remained. Chief Miller, bearing the weight of his family's name, was a direct descendant of this old feud. The town's seemingly harmonious facade was a carefully constructed illusion, built on a foundation of unspoken resentments and long-forgotten betrayals. Diaz realized that the missing letters weren't simply a random act of crime. They were a symptom of a deeper malaise, a festering wound left unhealed for decades. She broadened her investigation, interviewing longtime residents, carefully listening to their carefully chosen words, searching for any clues that might offer a glimpse into the town's hidden history. Old Mrs. Gable, with her sharp eyes and even sharper tongue, spoke of whispers of past violence, of families torn apart by secrets, of hidden wealth and clandestine deals. Her memories were fragmented, laced with fear and reluctance, but Diaz patiently pieced together her recollections, realizing that the old woman held the key to understanding the town's dark underbelly. Mr. Abernethy, the town's librarian and a historian of sorts, provided Diaz with access to personal diaries and letters from the past, offering further evidence of the long-standing tensions within Harmony Creek. These personal accounts painted a picture far different from the town's carefully cultivated image. They revealed a history of betrayal, manipulation, and violence, often hidden behind the mask of polite smiles and neighborly greetings. Diaz spent days poring over these personal accounts. Some were filled with gossip and petty grievances. Others, however, contained cryptic hints, oblique references to secret societies, clandestine meetings, and the hushed-up disappearance of individuals. The names and dates were often vague, the details intentionally obscured, yet the underlying sense of dread and fear was palpable. She discovered coded messages, hidden in plain sight, hinting at a network of influence and control that stretched back generations. One diary entry, written by a former mayor in the 1960s, mentioned a secret pact, a clandestine agreement between several influential families to protect their shared interests. The entry vaguely referred to certain letters and the importance of maintaining silence. Diaz felt a chill run down her spine. The missing letters were not a recent phenomenon. They were a continuation of a long-standing tradition of secrecy and control. The more Diaz learned about Harmony Creek's past, the more she realized that Sarah Miller's death was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of decades of suppressed grievances and buried secrets. The seemingly random disappearances of letters were a carefully orchestrated act, part of a larger conspiracy to silence dissent and maintain the status quo. The idyllic community, she now understood, was built on a foundation of deceit. Her investigation led her to the old Miller family home, a sprawling Victorian mansion that stood as a silent testament to generations of family history. The house was a repository of secrets, each room holding silent echoes of the past. She spent hours exploring the dusty attic, discovering forgotten photographs, faded letters, and old family diaries. These provided further insights into the Miller family's past, its involvement in the long-standing feud with the Ashworths, and its connection to the secret pact. She discovered a hidden compartment in Sarah Miller's old bedroom, containing a collection of encrypted messages that were far more detailed than the ones found in her online communications. These messages revealed a complex network of blackmail and intimidation, involving individuals from both the Miller and Ashworth families, as well as other prominent members of the community. The messages suggested Sarah had stumbled upon a secret that threatened to expose the entire network. The puzzle pieces were beginning to fall into place. The seemingly random selection of letters, the careful targeting of recipients. It all made sense now. The missing letters were not simply stolen. They were selectively removed to maintain control, to prevent the exposure of damaging secrets. And Sarah Miller, a young woman with a thirst for truth, had become an unwitting pawn in this dangerous game. Diaz realized that the investigation wasn't just about solving a murder. It was about exposing a deep-rooted conspiracy that threatened to unravel the very fabric of Harmony Creek. She began to understand why Chief Miller had been so reluctant to bring in an outside investigator. He, too, was entangled in the town's web of deceit, his own family history bound up with the very secrets that were being so fiercely protected. The investigation was turning into a dangerous game, one where the lines between victims and perpetrators were blurred. The idyllic facade of Harmony Creek had finally shattered. The truth, Diaz knew, was about to unleash a storm far more devastating than anyone could have imagined. Diaz leaned back in her creaky chair, the scent of old paper and dust thick in the air. The Harmony Creek Historical Society's archives had yielded a trove of information, but it was the gaps, the deliberate omissions, that truly spoke volumes. The missing letters weren't just random acts of vandalism. They were surgically precise, each target chosen with chilling intent. It was time to move beyond the historical context and delve into the psychology of the letter writer. Who was this individual, and what drove them to such meticulous, terrifying acts? Her first step was to refine the victim profile. The initial assumption was that the letters targeted individuals who held compromising information. But a closer look revealed a more nuanced pattern. Not all the victims possessed incriminating secrets in the traditional sense. Some were simply the keepers of sensitive family history, others held onto long-forgotten grudges, while a few seemed entirely inconsequential, their letters revealing nothing more than mundane daily routines. This lack of uniformity pointed to a deeper, more complex motive than simple blackmail. The common thread, Diaz realized, wasn't the content of the letters themselves, but the impact their disappearance would have. Each letter held a potential disruption, a rekindled feud, an exposed vulnerability, a long-buried secret resurrected. The letter writer wasn't just removing information. They were orchestrating chaos, carefully selecting targets to maximize the ripple effects of their actions. This suggested a level of sophistication beyond a simple thief or vandal. Diaz meticulously reviewed the methods employed. The letters vanished without a trace, leaving no signs of forced entry or struggle. This precision pointed towards someone with intimate knowledge of the victim's routines, someone who could move undetected and had access to their mail or personal spaces. The absence of any ransom demands further suggested that financial gain wasn't the primary motive. This wasn't robbery. It was a calculated campaign of disruption and control. Building a profile of the letter writer, Diaz started with their access and skill. The seamless nature of the thefts suggested an insider, someone familiar with the community's layout and social dynamics. Their knowledge of the target's personal lives suggested a long-term observer, someone who had been quietly gathering information over an extended period. The individual also possessed incredible patience and meticulous planning, capable of coordinating multiple disappearances without leaving a trace. The motive, more complex than simple theft or blackmail, pointed towards a desire for control. The letter writer wasn't interested in money or specific information. They were interested in maintaining the status quo, in preserving the carefully constructed illusion of Harmony Creek. This suggested a deeply ingrained attachment to the community, a fierce protectiveness of its image, or perhaps a twisted sense of order. Next, Diaz analyzed the timing of the disappearances. They weren't random. There were patterns emerging, seemingly connected to specific events within the community: a town meeting, a family gathering, the anniversary of a past incident. The letter writer was reacting to external stimuli, suggesting a reactive, rather than proactive, personality. This indicated a lack of long-term planning for the thefts themselves, but a sophisticated understanding of the community's reactions. Each stolen letter served as a subtle yet effective means of control, a silent warning to anyone who might challenge the established order. The psychological profile took shape. A meticulous planner, an insider with intimate knowledge of the town's intricate social web, an individual driven by a deep-seated need to maintain the peace, even if it meant suppressing uncomfortable truths. It was a profile that fit several individuals within Harmony Creek, particularly those connected to established families and long-standing power structures. Diaz considered Chief Miller again. His initial reluctance to involve outside investigators, his reticence to fully cooperate, his family's deep roots in the town's history, and the long-standing feud with the Ashworths, all pointed towards a potential connection. But he wasn't the only one. Several other influential figures within Harmony Creek shared similar characteristics. Individuals with a vested interest in maintaining the town's idyllic image, those whose secrets were potentially threatened by the surfacing of the past. The investigation shifted its focus. No longer was it simply about missing letters, but about identifying individuals who had the motive, opportunity, and psychological profile to orchestrate such a campaign. This involved re-examining every interaction, every conversation, every piece of information gathered so far, viewed through the lens of this newly constructed profile. Diaz revisited the old newspaper clippings, the personal diaries, and the coded messages, looking for subtle clues, hints that could connect the letter writer to specific individuals within the community. She painstakingly cross-referenced dates, locations, and even seemingly inconsequential details, searching for patterns and correlations. The process was painstaking, but she felt a growing sense of closure. The puzzle pieces were slowly, but surely, beginning to fall into place. One cryptic entry in Mr. Abernethy's diary caught her eye. It mentioned a guardian, a protector of Harmony Creek's secrets, someone who had been quietly safeguarding the town's history for decades. The entry referred to a pact, a promise made long ago, a commitment to silence, to protect the community's reputation at all costs. This guardian, Diaz surmised, was the likely orchestrator of the letter disappearances, a shadowy figure pulling the strings from the background. The hunt was no longer for a simple thief, but for a protector of secrets, a guardian of Harmony Creek's carefully crafted illusion. This guardian was deeply embedded within the town's structure, their actions woven into the fabric of its seemingly peaceful existence. And Diaz knew, with chilling certainty, that uncovering their identity would unleash a storm that would shatter the tranquil facade of Harmony Creek forever. The seemingly idyllic town was now a battleground, and the fight for the truth had only just begun. The missing letters were only the opening salvo in a far larger conflict, one that threatened to expose the dark underbelly of a community steeped in secret and bound by a pact of silence. The idyllic image she had initially encountered was crumbling, revealing a far more sinister reality beneath. Diaz understood now that her investigation was not simply about finding a criminal. It was about uncovering a conspiracy that spanned generations and threatened to unravel the very foundation of Harmony Creek. The initial assumption had been simple theft, vandalism even. But the escalating events painted a far more sinister picture. The disappearances weren't random acts. They were meticulously orchestrated, each letter's removal followed, chillingly, by the victim's demise. The connection wasn't immediately obvious, veiled in a cloak of seemingly unrelated events. Yet, as Diaz pored over the details, the victims' professions, their relationships, the content of the missing letters, a pattern began to solidify, a horrifying choreography of death. The first victim, elderly Mrs. Gable, had her letter stolen. A letter detailing a long-forgotten land dispute with the Ashworth family. Days later, she was found dead, a single crimson rose placed on her chest. The second, young Thomas Miller, a troubled youth who had confessed to petty crimes in a letter to his estranged father, met a similar fate. Discovered lifeless in the town's abandoned quarry, another rose marking the spot. Then came Arthur Blackwood, a respected lawyer, his missing letter containing sensitive client information. He was found strangled in his own study, the ubiquitous rose beside him, a grim signature. Each death was staged, calculated, almost theatrical in its precision. The rose, a chilling motif, seemed to mock the idyllic facade of Harmony Creek, its delicate petals stained with the town's grim secret. Diaz realized the killer wasn't merely stealing letters. They were enacting a perverse form of justice. punishing those whose secrets were deemed dangerous or disruptive to the town's carefully crafted peace. The connection lay not in the stolen letters themselves, but in their content and the potential impact their revelation could have. Mrs. Gable's land dispute, Thomas's confession, Mr. Blackwood's client's secrets, each held the potential to unravel a carefully constructed narrative, to expose fissures in the town's seemingly flawless image. The killer was preemptively silencing any threat to the status quo, removing the source before the secret could surface. Diaz meticulously mapped out the sequence of events, meticulously charting the victims' lives, their connections, and the content of their stolen letters. She created a timeline, a macabre flowchart where each stolen letter represented a node, each death a grim consequence. The sequence was chilling in its predictability, revealing a methodical killer, a master puppeteer orchestrating a gruesome play. The seemingly random acts were actually part of a deliberate, terrifying pattern. It was a pattern that began to reveal the killer's modus operandi, a carefully planned and executed campaign of terror. The meticulous nature of the killings revealed a highly organized mind, someone capable of meticulous planning and flawless execution. The killer wasn't acting impulsively. Each step was calculated, each move planned with chilling precision. The staging of the bodies, the placement of the rows, the absence of any apparent forced entry. It all spoke of a familiarity with the victims, an intimate knowledge of their routines and environments. This suggested an insider, someone deeply embedded within the Harmony Creek community. Diaz's investigation broadened beyond the mere theft of letters. It became a race against time, a pursuit of a predator who was deliberately escalating their actions, using the stolen letters as a blueprint for their deadly game. The initial investigation, focused on simple theft, was now a desperate attempt to prevent further bloodshed. She studied police reports, autopsy results, witness statements, each a piece of a horrifying puzzle. The consistency in the method of killing was particularly striking: subtle strangulation, no sign of a struggle. A single crimson rose left as a chilling signature. It suggested a level of intimacy, a personal connection between the killer and their victims, a level of control that went beyond simple murder. This wasn't random violence, it was targeted retribution, each death a direct consequence of a stolen letter's content. The analysis of the victims' social circles revealed another disturbing pattern. While seemingly disparate, they were all connected, however tenuously, to individuals who held significant power and influence in Harmony Creek. It was as if the killer was sending a message, not just to the victims, but to the entire community, a chilling warning to those who might dare to challenge the town's established order. The killer wasn't just silencing individuals, they were sending a message, a threat subtly woven into the fabric of the town's seemingly placid existence. The silence surrounding the killings was unsettling, a conspiracy of fear that had gripped the town. The idyllic facade was cracking, revealing a dark underbelly of suppressed secrets and hidden resentments. Diaz revisited old newspaper articles, searching for past disputes, long-forgotten feuds, and simmering resentments. She found instances of unresolved conflicts, buried grudges, and whispered secrets that were now surfacing through the lens of her investigation. The killer, she theorized, wasn't just reacting to current events, but to a history of unspoken tensions and unresolved conflicts. The seemingly idyllic town of Harmony Creek was proving to be a carefully constructed illusion, a facade concealing a network of hidden agendas, repressed traumas, and long-standing grudges. The letters, with their delicate script and seemingly innocuous content, were now the keys to unlocking this dark and horrifying truth, leading her down a path of ever-increasing danger, closer to the heart of a conspiracy that spanned generations. The pattern was crystal clear, terrifying in its implications. The killer was targeting individuals whose secrets, if revealed, could disrupt the carefully balanced power structure of Harmony Creek. The murders weren't just random acts of violence. They were precise, calculated moves in a larger game, a twisted attempt to maintain the town's carefully crafted illusion of peace and prosperity. The longer Diaz investigated, the more she realized that the idyllic image she had initially encountered was merely a deceptive mask, concealing a far more sinister reality. The killer wasn't just a murderer, they were a guardian of Harmony Creek's secrets, a protector of its carefully constructed illusion, willing to use violence to preserve the status quo. The stakes were higher than ever. The missing letters were not just isolated incidents. They were the prelude to a far more dangerous game, a conspiracy that went beyond the confines of a small town, reaching into the deepest, darkest recesses of human nature. Diaz knew that uncovering the truth would not only bring justice to the victims, but would also unleash a storm that would forever change the face of Harmony Creek. The tranquil setting she'd initially perceived was now a minefield, every interaction, every conversation, every shadow holding the potential for danger. The game was far from over. It was only just beginning. The rain hammered against the windows of the Harmony Creek police station, mirroring the relentless drumming of fear in Detective Diaz's heart. The fourth victim, Martha Jenkins, a librarian known for her quiet demeanor and sharp intellect, had been found this morning. Her lifeless body lay amongst the towering shelves of the town library. Another crimson rose nestled amongst the pages of a worn copy of Wuthering Heights, the letter stolen from her. A seemingly insignificant note detailing a forgotten loan to a prominent council member, Mr. Silas Blackwood, Arthur Blackwood's brother. The symmetry was terrifying. 4 victims, 4 stolen letters, 4 crimson roses. Each murder a chilling echo of the letter's contents, a perverse enactment of the silent judgment. The meticulously staged scenes spoke of a killer with an unnerving level of control, a mastery of detail that sent shivers down Diaz's spine. The police force, initially ill-equipped to handle what had begun as a series of petty thefts, was now overwhelmed. The small-town police chief, a kind-faced man named Henderson, was visibly strained, his usually jovial demeanor replaced with a grim determination. "We're losing control, Diaz," Henderson admitted, his voice heavy with exhaustion, the lines on his face etched deeper by the relentless pressure. "The town is on edge. Everyone's looking for answers, and we've got nothing." Diaz knew he was right. The idyllic facade of Harmony Creek had shattered, revealing a dark underbelly of fear and suspicion. The friendly smiles and neighborly chats were replaced by furtive glances and whispered conversations. The once vibrant community was now paralyzed by a chilling wave of paranoia. Children were afraid to walk home from school, shops were closing early, and the nights were filled with an unnerving silence, punctuated only by the distant howl of the wind. She stared at the crime scene photos again, meticulously studying each detail. Martha Jenkins, a woman who had dedicated her life to the quiet pursuit of knowledge, lay among the books she loved, a victim of a silent, brutal end. The rose, its crimson petals stark against the muted colors of the library, seemed to mock the serenity of the scene, a stark reminder of the violence that had ripped through the community. The pattern, though terrifying, was also revealing. The victims weren't chosen at random. Each letter, seemingly innocuous on the surface, held a secret, a piece of information that, if revealed, could threaten the established power structure of Harmony Creek. Mrs. Gable's land dispute, Thomas Miller's confession, Arthur Blackwood's client's secrets, and now Martha Jenkins's loan. Each represented a thread in a complex web of concealed truths. The killer was systematically removing those who posed a threat, silencing potential whistleblowers before they could speak. Diaz felt a rising sense of urgency. The killer was not just a murderer. They were a meticulous architect of fear, using the stolen letters as a blueprint for their deadly game. Each death was a message, a chilling warning to the remaining inhabitants of Harmony Creek. The rising body count was not just a statistic. It was a terrifying progression, a grim testament to the killer's escalating audacity. The investigation was expanding beyond the immediate victims. Diaz delved into the town's history, examining old records, interviewing longtime residents, piecing together a patchwork of forgotten grievances, simmering resentments, and unspoken alliances. She discovered a history of hushed-up scandals, covered-up crimes, and family feuds that had been swept under the rug for generations. Harmony Creek, she realized, was far from the idyllic paradise it pretended to be. It was a town built on secrets, a community sustained by a carefully constructed illusion of peace. The pressure from the media was mounting, each news report adding fuel to the community's growing sense of unease. The police were under intense scrutiny, facing criticism for their perceived slow response. Diaz felt the weight of the town's anxieties on her shoulders, the burden of protecting a community that seemed determined to bury its own secrets. Every clue was a step closer to the truth, but each step also brought her closer to the killer's deadly game. The fifth victim was found a week later. This time, it was Elias Thorne, a respected doctor with a spotless reputation. The letter stolen from his study contained a confession. A clandestine affair with a married woman whose husband held significant sway within the town council. Elias's body was found in his own surgery, amidst the sterile gleam of surgical instruments, the crimson rose lying beside him, a macabre punctuation mark. The pattern continued, terrifyingly consistent. Diaz felt a growing unease. The killer was not just targeting those with damaging secrets. They were choosing victims with a specific connection to the town's powerful elite. It suggested a far larger conspiracy, a network of complicity and concealment that reached into the very heart of Harmony Creek's power structure. The murders weren't merely isolated incidents. They were carefully orchestrated moves in a larger game of power, a desperate attempt to maintain the town's carefully constructed illusion. The town's silence was deafening. Fear had become a suffocating blanket, silencing potential witnesses, stifling any hint of rebellion. Diaz understood now that the killer was not just eliminating threats. They were consolidating power, reinforcing the status quo through terror. The idyllic facade of Harmony Creek was crumbling, revealing a terrifying reality beneath. A town ruled by fear, a community held hostage by its own secrets. Diaz intensified her investigation, revisiting old cases, delving deeper into the town's tangled web of relationships. She found hidden connections, unspoken alliances, and long-forgotten conflicts, all pointing towards a single, devastating truth. The killer wasn't an outsider. They were someone deeply embedded within the Harmony Creek community, someone who had the power and influence to manipulate the town's narrative, to orchestrate a reign of terror from the shadows. The escalating body count was a stark reminder of the lethal game unfolding. Each murder was a step closer to the truth, but also a step closer to the killer's ultimate goal, to maintain the town's meticulously crafted illusion of peace and prosperity at any cost. The rain continued to fall, washing the streets of Harmony Creek, but it couldn't wash away the fear, the blood, or the secrets that were now threatening to consume the town. Diaz knew that uncovering the truth would not just be a matter of solving a series of murders. It would mean confronting a dark conspiracy that ran deeper than she could have ever imagined. Conspiracy that threatened to unravel the very fabric of Harmony Creek. The game was far from over. It was, in fact, just beginning to escalate into something far more terrifying. The discovery of Elias Thorne's body, a respected pillar of the community, sent shockwaves through Harmony Creek. His death shattered the illusion of safety, the unspoken agreement that such things didn't happen in their idyllic town. Now, even the most devout believers in Harmony Creek's pristine image were questioning the pervasive sense of security that had long defined their lives. The whispers, once muted and discreet, now swelled into a cacophony of fear and speculation. Every shadow seemed to harbor a potential killer, every friendly face a mask concealing a dark secret. Diaz found herself inundated with a deluge of information, much of it contradictory and unreliable. Each resident, burdened by their own anxieties, offered a different perspective, painting a fractured and confusing picture of events. Silas Blackwood, Arthur's brother, initially a minor suspect due to Martha Jenkins's loan, became a focal point of renewed interest. His proximity to power, his air of detached arrogance, and the hushed whispers surrounding his past dealings made him a compelling candidate. He was, after all, connected to 3 of the victims through various business and social ties. However, Silas possessed a meticulous alibi for each murder. His movements were meticulously documented, his schedule tightly controlled, his actions almost too perfectly accounted for. It was almost as if he had anticipated the investigation and created a flawless defense. This, Diaz realized, was not a sign of innocence, but rather the hallmark of a master manipulator. Then there was Amelia Hayes, the seemingly fragile owner of the town's antique shop. She was an enigma, a woman shrouded in an aura of quiet mystery. Her shop, filled with relics from Harmony Creek's past, seemed to hold more secrets than it revealed. Diaz discovered that Amelia had had clandestine meetings with several of the victims, meetings that were never recorded or witnessed. The content of these meetings remained shrouded in mystery, but their very existence suggested a hidden network of communication. Amelia's calm demeanor and soft-spoken manner conceal a steeliness of resolve that intrigued and unsettled Diaz simultaneously. Further complicating matters was the involvement of Reverend Caleb Miller, the town's spiritual leader. He had known the victims, offering words of comfort and guidance during their lives. Now his presence cast a long shadow of suspicion. The Reverend, while seemingly devout, had a troubled past, a history of financial irregularities and personal indiscretions that remained hidden beneath the veneer of piety. He offered a compelling motive: the protection of his reputation and his position within the community. His access to the victims, through his pastoral duties, made him a credible suspect. Yet, like Silas, he had a near-impeccable alibi. The investigation led Diaz down a rabbit hole of hidden alliances, unspoken resentments, and long-forgotten conflicts. Each suspect was connected to another, creating a complex web of relationships that seemed designed to conceal the truth. The town's meticulously crafted image of unity and harmony was a carefully constructed facade, masking a labyrinth of deceit and betrayal. The more Diaz delved into the past, the more unsettling the reality of Harmony Creek became. She discovered a hidden history of hushed-up scandals, forgotten grievances, and simmering resentments that had festered for generations. The town's pristine exterior concealed a dark and turbulent undercurrent, a legacy of unresolved conflicts that fueled the current crisis. She revisited the cases of missing persons and unsolved crimes from the town archives. Each case, initially deemed insignificant, now seemed to echo the current murders, exhibiting similar patterns of manipulation and deception. The same names appeared repeatedly, creating a network of complicity that reached into the heart of Harmony Creek's power structure. The trail led her to old land deeds, forgotten business dealings, and faded photographs. Pieces of a puzzle that slowly revealed a sinister truth. The pressure on Diaz intensified. The media spotlight magnified the town's fear, feeding the paranoia and hindering the investigation. She battled not only the killer's cunning, but also the collective silence of the community, a silence born of fear and self-preservation. Every lead, no matter how promising, led to a dead end, a series of carefully constructed alibis and seemingly irrefutable evidence. Diaz began to feel as though she was chasing a phantom, a killer who was always one step ahead. She found herself questioning everyone and everything. The seemingly friendly neighbor could be harboring a deadly secret, the respected community member a ruthless manipulator. The very foundation of Harmony Creek seemed to crumble beneath her feet, revealing a darkness far deeper and more insidious than she had ever imagined. The idyllic paradise was a fabrication, a carefully constructed illusion concealing a network of deceit and brutality. One evening, while poring over old town records, Diaz stumbled upon a hidden ledger, meticulously documenting secret transactions and coded messages. The ledger revealed a clandestine network of individuals involved in a far-reaching conspiracy that went beyond the murders. It was a complex web of power, influence, and manipulation that had shaped Harmony Creek's history and continues to fuel its present turmoil. The ledger's contents linked all the suspects, unveiling a complex pattern of alliances and betrayals. Silas Blackwood, Amelia Hayes, and Reverend Miller were not merely suspects. They were players in a larger game of power, each vying for control within the town's hidden power structure. The murders were not random acts of violence. They were calculated moves in a larger game, a desperate attempt to eliminate obstacles and consolidate power. The truth, when it finally began to surface, was far more terrifying than anything Diaz could have conceived. Harmony Creek, the town that prided itself on its idyllic nature, was a breeding ground for darkness, a place where secrets were currency and fear the ultimate weapon. The seemingly disparate victims were connected not just by the stolen letters, but by their knowledge of the town's dark secrets and their refusal to remain silent. The killer wasn't an outsider. They were someone deeply embedded within the community, someone who could orchestrate the murders without raising suspicion, someone who had the power and influence to manipulate the narrative and maintain control. The rain continued to fall, washing the streets of Harmony Creek, but it couldn't wash away the blood, the fear, and the secrets that threatened to engulf the town. The game was far from over. It was, in fact, only just beginning. The final pieces of the puzzle were about to fall into place, revealing a truth that would shatter Harmony Creek to its very core. The hunt for the killer was reaching its climax, terrifying finale that would expose the darkest secrets of a seemingly idyllic community. The rain hammered against the corrugated iron roof of the Harmony Creek police station, a relentless percussion accompanying Diaz's feverish work. The ledger, its pages brittle with age, lay open before her, a roadmap to the town's darkest secrets. The meticulously recorded transactions, the coded messages, the names, Silas Blackwood, Amelia Hayes, Reverend Miller, all intertwined in a sinister dance of power and deceit. The stolen letters weren't random. They were carefully selected, each holding a piece of the puzzle that revealed the killer's motive: to silence those who threatened to expose the town's carefully concealed corruption. Diaz traced the pattern of the murders. Each victim, before their death, had received a letter containing a piece of information damaging to a member of Harmony Creek's elite. The killer, Diaz realized, wasn't just eliminating witnesses. They were systematically dismantling the network of complicity that had held the town together for generations. The killer was playing a game, a deadly game of cat and mouse, using the stolen letters as pawns and the victims as sacrifices. She reread the coded messages, their meaning now clear. They represented a system of control, a hierarchy of power within the hidden network. Silas, with his financial prowess, held a significant position. Amelia, with her knowledge of the town's history, possessed crucial information. Reverend Miller, with his influence over the community, provided the cover. They were a triumvirate of control, each dependent on the others, each playing their part in maintaining the fragile balance of power. Diaz's mind raced. The killer was clever, meticulous, anticipating her every move. To catch them, she needed to play their game, to outwit them at their own game. She needed a trap so intricate, so perfectly designed, that it would ensnare the killer without revealing her hand. The bait would be the missing piece of the puzzle, the final stolen letter. A letter that would expose the killer's identity and their involvement in the conspiracy. But which letter? Which piece of information would be compelling enough to lure the killer into the open? Diaz reviewed the ledger again, focusing on the victim's connections to the three main suspects. She noticed a recurring theme. Each victim had held a piece of information that threatened the power structure, but each piece was insufficient on its own to trigger a direct response. The killer had been patient, methodical, eliminating threats one by one. Then, it struck her. The final letter wouldn't be a new piece of information, it would be a culmination, a synthesis of all the previous letters, a single document exposing the entire conspiracy. It wouldn't just implicate one individual, it would implicate them all. It would be the ultimate bait, irresistible to the killer. Diaz began to draft the letter, weaving together carefully selected fragments from each of the stolen letters. She used coded language, mirroring the style of the original messages, but leaving subtle clues that would only be understood by the killer. The letter wouldn't accuse anyone directly. It would simply present the evidence, laying bare the entire network of deceit and corruption. She knew the killer would be watching, monitoring her every move. The trap had to be subtle, a carefully orchestrated scene designed to evoke a specific reaction. The location had to be significant, a place with meaning, a place that would resonate with the killer's psychology. Diaz chose the old abandoned mill on the outskirts of Harmony Creek. It had been the site of numerous town scandals over the years, a place where secrets had been buried, both literally and figuratively. The trap involved more than just the letter. Diaz needed to create an atmosphere of vulnerability, a sense of impending danger. She subtly leaked information to the media, focusing on the letter's existence without revealing its contents. This would heighten the killer's anxiety, increasing the likelihood of them taking the bait. She also arranged for a discreet surveillance team to monitor the mill and surrounding areas. The next few days were a blur of activity. Diaz worked tirelessly, meticulously crafting every detail of the trap. She ensured that the letter was placed precisely where the killer would find it, making it appear as if it had been inadvertently left behind, a careless mistake waiting to be discovered. She even planted subtle clues to lead the killer to the letter, a distinctive scent, a specific symbol, all designed to appeal to their psychological profile. The night of the trap was cold and dark. A biting wind whipped through Harmony Creek, carrying the scent of rain and fear. Diaz watched from a hidden vantage point as the surveillance team deployed their equipment around the abandoned mill. The tension was palpable, the silence broken only by the relentless drumming of rain against the tin roof. Hours passed, each moment stretching into an eternity. Diaz felt the weight of the investigation, the lives hanging in the balance. She knew that the trap, while meticulously planned, was a gamble, a dangerous game of chance. The killer could choose not to take the bait, or worse, they could be prepared for the trap. Then, a figure emerged from the darkness. A lone figure, cloaked in shadow, moving with a quiet purpose. The figure approached the mill, their silhouette framed by the flickering light of the moon. Diaz's heart pounded in her chest, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The trap was set. The game had begun. The killer had taken the bait. The question now was, who was it? And what would happen next? The wait for the killer's arrival was agonizingly slow, each second feeling like an eternity. The silent anticipation was suffocating, amplified by the rhythmic drumming of the rain against the mill's roof. The figure, cloaked and shadowy, moved with a practiced grace that belied any sense of urgency. They weren't rushing. They were deliberate, almost leisurely in their approach, as if savoring the anticipation. Diaz watched, her breath catching in her throat, the image burn into her retinas. A tall, lean silhouette, moving with an unnerving quietness against the backdrop of the dilapidated mill. The moon, a sliver of silver in the inky sky, cast long, dancing shadows that distorted the figure's form, making it difficult to discern any identifying features. The figure reached the mill, their hand hovering over the rough-hewn wooden door. Diaz could almost feel the tension radiating from the surveillance monitors, the silent vigil of her team a palpable presence in the darkness. Then, a creak. The door swung inward, the sound echoing eerily in the night. The figure disappeared inside, swallowed by the shadows within the mill's decaying interior. Diaz's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. Years of experience, countless hours of investigation, all culminated in this single, breath-stealing moment. She signaled to her team, their movements swift and silent, a well-rehearsed ballet of precision and stealth. They surrounded the mill, forming a tight perimeter, ready to spring into action. The chase began not within the mill's decaying walls, but in the alleyway behind it. A sudden crash of wood and the startled cry of a crow shattered the tense silence. The figure, having apparently found the letter Diaz had planted, bolted. The night air crackled with a sudden violent energy as the killer erupted from the mill's back entrance, a dark shape against the pale moonlight. Diaz emerged from her hiding place, adrenaline surging through her veins. The killer was fast, incredibly fast, their movements fluid and almost supernatural. They weaved through the narrow alley, disappearing momentarily into the shadows before reappearing further down, their flight fueled by a desperate, frantic energy. Diaz pursued, her boots thudding on the damp cobblestones, her every sense heightened, focused on the fleeting glimpses of the fleeing figure. The chase led them through the heart of Harmony Creek, a labyrinth of narrow streets and darkened houses. The killer showed a surprising knowledge of the town's hidden pathways, shortcuts, and blind alleys, expertly using the town's familiar layout to their advantage. Diaz, while familiar with the town, was hampered by the need to maintain a balance between pursuit and caution. The killer, unburdened by such concerns, moved with the terrifying grace of someone intimately familiar with the town's secrets. They darted through the town square, the silent expanse broken only by the rhythmic pounding of their footsteps and the distant howl of a dog. Diaz saw glimpses of the killer's face, a flash of pale skin, a glint of dark eyes, but never enough to fully identify them. The killer seemed to anticipate her every move, effortlessly evading her grasp as if they were reading her mind. The chase was a brutal dance of evasion and pursuit, a deadly game of cat and mouse played out under the watchful gaze of the silent town. The killer led Diaz on a twisting path, a dizzying chase through the town's back streets and alleyways. They were not just running, they were fighting for their life, every turn a desperate gamble. Diaz, meanwhile, was fueled by a sense of righteous fury, a burning determination to apprehend the individual who had terrorized Harmony Creek for so long. The tension was unbearable, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of rain and fear. The chase led them to the old Harmony Creek cemetery, the silence of the night broken only by the rhythmic drumming of rain on the weathered tombstones. The killer, sensing Diaz closing in, vaulted a low stone wall and disappeared into the dense undergrowth that surrounded the graveyard. Diaz followed, navigating the maze of overgrown shrubs and ancient trees, the darkness clinging to her like a shroud. The killer's strategy was a combination of calculated risk and desperate improvisation, utilizing the cemetery's labyrinthine pathways to their advantage. They were clearly familiar with this place, using the shadows and the overgrown foliage to obscure their movements. Diaz, forced to slow her pace to avoid injury, had to rely more on instinct and sound than on sight. The rustling of leaves, the snap of a twig, were all clues in this nocturnal game of hide and seek. The chase intensified as they moved into a secluded section of the cemetery, the air growing colder, the silence more profound. The killer, suddenly changing tactics, made a daring dash across the open space, aiming for the old iron gates at the far end of the graveyard. Diaz, aware she risked losing the killer in the darkness, risked a bold maneuver of her own, cutting off the killer's escape route. The confrontation was sudden and brutal. The killer, cornered and desperate, turned to face Diaz, their face now clearly visible under the pale light of the moon. It was Amelia Hayes, her eyes filled with a chilling mixture of fear and defiance. The stolen letters, the coded messages, the carefully orchestrated murders, it all came together in this moment of chilling revelation. The struggle was fierce and brief. Amelia, surprisingly strong, fought with the desperation of a cornered animal. But Diaz, fueled by years of experience and a burning desire for justice, managed to subdue her, bringing the deadly game to a sudden, brutal end. The rain continued to fall, washing the blood from Amelia's hands, a grim cleansing ritual in the cold, silent night. The chase was over, but the shadow of Harmony Creek's secrets remained, a lingering darkness that Diaz knew would take a long time to fully dispel. The arrest of Amelia Hayes was only the beginning of the unraveling of the town's tightly woven web of corruption and deceit. Many more questions remained, many more secrets yet to be uncovered. The night was far from over. The rain continued to fall, washing away the blood, but not the lingering sense of unease that permeated the very air of Harmony Creek. The rain, a relentless percussion against the ancient stones of the cemetery, seemed to mirror the frantic rhythm of Diaz's heart. Amelia Hayes, the seemingly demure librarian, the pillar of Harmony Creek's quiet respectability, lay subdued at her feet, her breath ragged, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and something akin to resignation. The image clashed violently with the picture Diaz had painstakingly constructed over months of painstaking investigation. This wasn't the cold-blooded killer she'd envisioned, the shadowy figure that had haunted her nightmares. This was a broken woman. Diaz knelt, the chill of the wet ground seeping into her bones, her gaze fixed on Amelia's face. The moonlight glinted off the silver chain around her neck, a delicate pendant bearing a single tarnished raven's feather. It was a detail that had been overlooked during the initial investigation, a small, seemingly insignificant detail now looming large in Diaz's mind. As the police arrived, sirens wailing in the distance, a sudden memory pierced through the fog of adrenaline. A discarded photograph found tucked away in the dusty corner of Amelia's attic. A picture of a young girl, her face obscured by shadow, her hand clasped tightly around a similar raven's feather. The girl bore an uncanny resemblance to Amelia, yet there was something different, a haunted look in her eyes, a stark contrast to Amelia's current state of defeated resignation. The arrest was swift, the formalities perfunctory. As Amelia was led away, Diaz felt a prickle of unease. Something didn't fit. The meticulous planning, the coded messages, the sheer audacity of the murders. It all pointed to a calculated, methodical killer, not a woman broken by grief. The revelation of Amelia's identity as the killer had been shocking, but it wasn't the complete picture. Back at the station, Diaz reviewed the evidence, poring over the recovered letters, the coded messages, each cryptic phrase a new puzzle piece in a larger, more complex picture. She focused on the raven's feather, its recurring motif in the crime scene photos, the photograph from Amelia's attic, the seemingly innocuous details that had previously slipped through the cracks. The pattern started to emerge, a chilling narrative unfolding before her eyes, a tale of betrayal, manipulation, and a darkness far deeper than she could have ever imagined. The letters weren't merely threatening notes. They were a chronicle, a fragmented diary of a woman desperate to reclaim what was lost, a desperate plea for justice obscured within layers of code. The murders weren't random acts of violence. They were targeted, deliberate, each victim connected to a tangled web of deceit that stretched back decades. Amelia wasn't simply a killer. She was a victim, a pawn in a larger game, manipulated and used by those in power. The photograph of the young girl became the key, the missing piece in the puzzle. Diaz discovered the girl's identity. Eleanor Vance, Amelia's younger sister, who had disappeared 20 years ago. Eleanor had been involved in a scandal that rocked Harmony Creek, a scandal involving local businessmen and powerful officials. The evidence suggested that Eleanor had uncovered a conspiracy of vast proportions, a network of corruption that had thrived in the shadows of this seemingly idyllic town for years. The coded messages within the letters weren't just threats. They were a desperate attempt by Amelia to expose the conspiracy, to avenge her sister's death. Each murder was a carefully calculated move, a message delivered to the conspirators, a step closer to revealing their crimes. Amelia, using her knowledge of the town and the intricate web of relationships, had used her position to manipulate the narrative, using the murders as a means to expose the corruption, using the killer's own tactics against them. Diaz realized that Amelia had been framing herself, using the coded messages and her own actions to lead the investigation toward a conclusion that would ultimately expose the network, sacrificing herself to bring down those responsible. She was playing a deadly game of chess, sacrificing pawns to checkmate the king. The initial belief that Amelia was a cold-blooded killer was a carefully crafted illusion, a part of her larger plan. The seemingly random acts were all connected, a chilling orchestration designed to lead the investigators to the ultimate truth. The complexity of her plan was staggering, each step calculated, each murder a carefully placed piece on a map of her chessboard. The realization hit Diaz with the force of a physical blow. She had been so focused on catching the killer that she had failed to see the bigger picture, the intricate web of deceit that had been woven around her. Amelia's actions, previously perceived as malicious, now appeared as a desperate act of defiance, a final, desperate attempt to right a wrong, to expose a truth that had remained buried for far too long. This new understanding added a layer of moral complexity to the narrative. The line between victim and perpetrator blurred, the roles reversed in a horrifying game of deception. Was Amelia a killer or a victim? A murderer or a martyr? The answer, Diaz realized, lay somewhere in the gray area, a stark reflection of the moral ambiguities that permeated the very fabric of Harmony Creek. The town, once perceived as a picture-perfect community, now revealed itself to be a festering wound, its idyllic facade masking a deep-seated rot of corruption and deceit. The seemingly random murders were part of a larger plan, a meticulously crafted symphony of chaos designed to expose the hidden truth. Amelia's actions, though violent, were motivated by a desperate desire for justice, a poignant attempt to avenge her sister's death and expose the conspiracy that had stolen her childhood and her family's happiness. The revelation transformed the entire narrative, shattering the initial perception of Amelia as a simple killer and thrusting her into a new light, that of a vigilant, a woman driven by grief and a burning need for justice. Her carefully constructed plan, a game of cat and mouse with the law enforcement, was ultimately an elaborate attempt to unveil the truth, a gamble of life and death, played out against the backdrop of the seemingly placid town, Harmony Creek. The weight of this revelation settled heavily on Diaz's shoulders. She had apprehended the killer, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she had captured the wrong person. The true culprits remained free, hidden within the town's shadows, their crimes concealed beneath the veneer of normalcy. The arrest of Amelia Hayes was merely the first act in a much larger drama, a drama that had yet to reach its climax. The rain continued its relentless fall, washing over the cemetery, cleansing the ground, but failing to wash away the unsettling truth that now lay before Diaz. The fight for justice had only just begun. The shadows of Harmony Creek, deeper and more intricate than she ever imagined, now loomed larger than ever. The unraveling of the truth, she realized, was only just beginning. The revelation that Amelia Hayes, the quiet, unassuming librarian, was the Harmony Creek killer sent shockwaves through the town. The initial disbelief morphed into a chilling realization. The idyllic facade of Harmony Creek had been shattered, revealing a darkness lurking beneath the surface. The whispers started subtly, in hushed tones behind cupped hands, in furtive glances across the town square. Then, they swelled into a cacophony of speculation, accusations, and fear. The town's reaction was a complex tapestry woven from threads of shock, betrayal, and a chilling sense of unease. For years, Amelia had been a fixture of the community, a familiar face at the library, a volunteer at the local soup kitchen, a woman who seemed to embody the very essence of Harmony Creek's quiet, unassuming charm. Now, she was a monster, a cold-blooded killer who had preyed on their unsuspecting neighbors. The elderly Mrs. Gable, whose late husband had been a close friend of Amelia's, wept openly, clutching a framed photograph of the couple. She seemed so kind, so gentle, she sobbed, her voice trembling. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. Her grief wasn't just for her deceased husband. It was a visceral reaction to the shattering of her perception of reality, a realization that the world she had known, the world she had trusted, had been a carefully constructed lie. The younger generation, those who had grown up with Amelia, were equally stunned. Teenagers, who had once sought out Amelia for book recommendations or help with research projects, were now left grappling with a chilling revision of their childhood memories. The library, once a sanctuary of quiet contemplation, now stood as a stark reminder of the darkness that had been concealed within its walls. The reaction wasn't solely one of condemnation. Some whispered about possible motives, suggesting a hidden desperation, a pain unacknowledged, a secret that could explain, or at least partially justify, the unspeakable acts. These whispers, however, were quickly drowned out by the chorus of outrage and revulsion, a testament to the depth of shock and betrayal that had gripped the community. The image of Amelia, once a symbol of Harmony Creek's comforting normalcy, had been irrevocably tarnished, replaced with the horrifying visage of a cold-blooded killer. Diaz, despite her initial shock, felt a nagging sense of unease. Something still felt wrong. The meticulous planning, the intricate web of deceit, the calculated nature of the murders, it didn't quite align with the image of a broken woman driven to madness by grief. Amelia's confession, delivered in a monotone whisper, lacked the passionate fury or desperate remorse one would expect from a guilty party. It was too calculated. As the days turned into weeks, Diaz delved deeper into Amelia's past, tirelessly pursuing every lead, every whisper, every clue that might shed light on the enigma that was Amelia Hayes. She unearthed a past far more complex than the town had ever imagined. Amelia's childhood had been marred by tragedy. Her younger sister, Eleanor, had vanished without a trace 20 years earlier, a case that had haunted the town and remained unsolved. Diaz found old newspaper clippings, yellowed and brittle with age, detailing Eleanor's disappearance. The articles hinted at a possible connection to a group of influential local businessmen, men who held significant power and influence within Harmony Creek. These men, pillars of the community, their names synonymous with respectability and success, were now under a cloud of suspicion. The investigation unearthed a web of hidden relationships, secret meetings, and hushed transactions. Diaz discovered a pattern of intimidation, threats, and even violence, all seemingly aimed at silencing anyone who dared to inquire too closely into the circumstances of Eleanor's disappearance. The more she dug, the more she realized that the seemingly idyllic town of Harmony Creek was harboring a dark secret, a conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons of power. Then came the discovery of a hidden ledger tucked away in a forgotten safe deposit box, detailing a series of illicit transactions, bribes, and payoffs. The names listed were those of the town's most respected citizens, the mayor, the police chief, prominent businessmen, and even the town's beloved pastor. The ledger revealed a network of corruption, a web of deceit that stretched far beyond the initial suspicions. Eleanor's disappearance wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a calculated act of silencing, a desperate attempt to cover up a vast conspiracy. The realization hit Diaz with the force of a physical blow. Amelia's actions, previously viewed as those of a ruthless killer, now appeared to be a desperate attempt at justice. The murders weren't random acts of violence. They were meticulously planned, symbolic acts, each victim a key player in the conspiracy. Amelia wasn't merely a killer. She was a vigilant, a lone warrior fighting against a formidable foe, using the very tools of her enemies against them. The coded messages, initially seen as the ramblings of a deranged mind, were now deciphered as a meticulously crafted narrative, a testament to Amelia's intelligence and her unwavering determination. The puzzle pieces finally fell into place. Amelia, driven by grief and a desire for justice, had orchestrated the murders as a means to expose the conspiracy, to bring the perpetrators to justice. She had played the part of the killer masterfully, leading the investigation astray, ensuring her capture while simultaneously laying bare the intricate web of corruption that had consumed her town. The impact of this revelation was profound. Harmony Creek was thrown into chaos. The arrests of the town's elite sent shockwaves through the community. The once unwavering trust in local authorities was shattered, replaced by suspicion, mistrust, and a deep sense of betrayal. The revelation forced the townsfolk to confront the dark underbelly of their seemingly idyllic community, a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that even in the most peaceful of settings, darkness can thrive. The trial that followed was nothing short of sensational. Amelia's story, initially met with horror and disgust, was slowly transforming into one of grudging respect and even admiration. Her actions, though undeniably violent, were viewed by many as a necessary evil, a desperate act of defiance against a corrupt system. The ensuing legal battle exposed the vastness of the conspiracy, the extent of the corruption, and the sheer lengths Amelia had gone to expose the truth. In the end, Amelia was found guilty of murder, but her sentence was met with a strange mixture of anger and reluctant admiration. Some viewed her as a cold-blooded killer, others as a modern-day Robin Hood, a woman who had taken justice into her own hands when the system had failed. The true measure of her actions, Diaz realized, lay not in the legality, but in the moral complexity of her story, a stark reminder that justice is not always black and white, and that sometimes the line between victim and perpetrator becomes hopelessly blurred. Harmony Creek, forever scarred by the events, would never be the same. The idyllic facade was gone, replaced with a raw, unsettling reality. The truth about their town had finally been exposed, and it was far darker and far more complex than anyone could have imagined. The old clock tower, its weathered face etched with the passage of time, stood sentinel over Harmony Creek. Inside, its echoing chambers held the weight of secrets, of whispers carried on the wind, of a town's collective breath held captive. It was here, in this forgotten sanctuary, that Diaz finally confronted Amelia Hayes. Amelia sat perched high in the bell tower, a stark silhouette against the fading twilight. The setting sun cast long, skeletal shadows across the dusty floorboards, lending an almost theatrical quality to the scene. Diaz found her there, a single shaft of light illuminating the quiet figure. The air hung heavy with unspoken words, with the weight of unanswered questions, with the chilling silence that precedes a storm. "It's over, Amelia," Diaz said, her voice a low murmur against the backdrop of the wind whistling through the tower's crevices. Her words, however, seemed to fall flat, lost in the cavernous space. Amelia didn't flinch, didn't turn. She remained motionless, her gaze fixed on the panoramic view of Harmony Creek spread out below. Diaz approached cautiously, each step echoing in the silence. The closer she got, the more she felt the weight of Amelia's story pressing down on her, the burden of a life lived in the shadows, a burden of secrets and lies that had culminated in this climactic confrontation. Why Amelia? Why all the meticulous planning? Why the elaborate charade? Diaz asked, her voice barely a whisper. Amelia finally turned, her eyes that once held the gentle warmth of a librarian, now bore a chilling emptiness, met Diaz's gaze. There was no flicker of fear, no tremor of guilt, only a quiet resignation. "Justice," Amelia replied, her voice as dry and brittle as the fallen leaves swirling beneath the tower. It's a word they throw around so carelessly, but for some, it's an elusive phantom. For me, it was the only thing that kept me going. She spoke of Eleanor, her sister, whose disappearance had cast a long, dark shadow over her life. She spoke of the cover-up, of the powerful men who had silenced her, who had bought their silence with money and power. She spoke of the years of searching, of the endless dead ends, the constant frustration, the burning desire for retribution. They took her from me, Amelia said, her voice laced with a chilling intensity. They stole her life, stole her future, and then tried to bury the truth. They thought they could get away with it. They thought their money and influence would protect them. They were wrong. The words tumbled out of her, a torrent of pent-up emotions, a lifetime of pain and anguish unleashed in the desolate confines of the old clock tower. Diaz listened, her earlier suspicions confirmed, yet overwhelmed by the chilling reality of Amelia's story. The murders weren't random acts of violence. They were carefully orchestrated pieces of a larger puzzle, a deadly game played to expose the truth. Each one, Amelia continued, her voice low and steady, represented a piece of the puzzle. A step closer to uncovering their conspiracy. A way to make them pay for what they did. The narrative unfolded, a tapestry woven from threads of grief, vengeance, and desperate hope. Diaz learned of the coded messages left at the crime scenes. Not the ramblings of a madman, but carefully crafted clues leading her to uncover the truth. She learned of Amelia's meticulous research, her strategic planning, her mastery of deception. She was a master strategist who had played the role of the killer perfectly, ensuring her capture while simultaneously exposing the conspiracy. The confrontation stretched into hours, a silent battle of wills between detective and killer. Diaz pressed her, trying to understand the emotional toll, the psychological damage, the sheer weight of responsibility Amelia had shouldered. But Amelia remained resolute, unyielding. Her grief, her anger, her desire for justice, they had become her driving force, her sole purpose. The silence in the tower was punctuated only by the wind's mournful howl and the distant sounds of Harmony Creek. The night enveloped them, shrouding the scene in a cloak of darkness. Yet, the light from the setting sun revealed the intricate details of Amelia's plan. She had used their arrogance and power against them, turning their wealth and influence into weapons of self-destruction. As the night deepened, a different kind of understanding blossomed between the two women. Diaz, despite the gravity of Amelia's crimes, felt a grudging respect for her dedication, her courage, and her unwavering pursuit of justice. Amelia, for all her cold calculation, revealed a vulnerability, a raw human emotion that transcended the brutality of her actions. She wasn't just a killer. She was a woman broken by grief, driven by a desperate need for justice that the system had failed to provide. The confrontation wasn't a physical struggle, but a clash of wills, a psychological battle fought in the silent chambers of the clock tower. It was a duel between justice and vengeance, between the cold reality of the law and the passionate flame of retribution. As dawn approached, painting the sky with hues of hope and despair, Diaz left the tower, carrying the weight of the truth, of a town's shattered illusion, and of a killer's complex, agonizing journey. The confrontation had concluded, but the ramifications were far from over. Harmony Creek would forever be scarred, forever changed by the events that unfolded within the walls of the old clock tower. The story of Amelia Hayes, the quiet librarian who became a vigilant, would forever haunt the town. The line between justice and vengeance, between victim and perpetrator, had blurred to an almost imperceptible haze, leaving a chilling reminder that the darkness within a seemingly idyllic community can be as deep and unforgiving as the shadows that fell upon that old clock tower. The car ride back to town was strangely silent. Diaz, usually a whirlwind of activity and questions, found herself subdued, the events in the clock tower replaying in her mind like a broken record. The dawn painted the sky in soft pastels, a stark contrast to the darkness she carried within. Amelia's confession, her justification, her raw pain, it resonated deeply, leaving an unsettling echo in Diaz's soul. It wasn't the neat, easily categorized case she had anticipated. Harmony Creek, once a picture of idyllic serenity, now felt tainted, its pristine surface marred by a dark undercurrent that seeped into every aspect of its existence. The town awoke to the news slowly, a ripple effect beginning at the police station and spreading outward, touching every home, every business, every life. The initial shock gave way to a stunned silence, then to a wave of whispered conversations, hushed debates, and simmering resentments. The carefully constructed facade of Harmony Creek crumbled, revealing the cracks in its foundation, the festering wounds beneath the veneer of perfection. The air, once thick with the scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass, now carried the bitter tang of betrayal and disillusionment. The psychological impact on the community was profound. The comfortable, predictable rhythms of life were shattered. Trust, once a cornerstone of their existence, was eroded, replaced by suspicion and uncertainty. Neighbors eyed each other with a new wariness, their conversations laced with unspoken accusations and veiled anxieties. The sense of security, the belief in the inviolability of their peaceful haven, was gone, replaced by a deep-seated unease. Even the most mundane aspects of daily life, a walk in the park, a friendly chat over the fence, became infused with a sense of vulnerability, of a latent threat lurking beneath the surface. The children, particularly, were affected. Their innocent games were tinged with fear, their imaginations fueled by the gruesome details that filtered through the hushed whispers and hushed conversations of adults. The playground, once a symbol of carefree joy, now felt shadowed, a place where the echo of Amelia's actions resonated. The once vibrant school, once filled with the happy sounds of learning, now seemed to echo with the somber undertones of shared trauma. Even Diaz, a seasoned detective hardened by years of exposure to the city's grim realities, found herself grappling with the psychological fallout. Amelia's story, her motivations, her unyielding resolve, had stirred something within her, a disquieting mix of admiration, pity, and profound unease. The lines of justice and vengeance had blurred, leaving her questioning the very nature of morality, the complexities of human nature. She found herself replaying their conversation, dissecting Amelia's words, searching for clues beyond the legal framework, struggling to understand the nuances of a woman driven to such extremes. The images of Amelia perched high in the clock tower, her silhouette a stark contrast against the setting sun, remained etched in her memory, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of Harmony Creek. The trial was a media circus, a spectacle that further tore the town apart. The details of Amelia's meticulously planned actions, the intricate web of deception, the cold calculation behind her seemingly random acts of violence. It all played out in the harsh glare of public scrutiny. The courtroom became a battleground, a place where the truth was dissected, debated, and ultimately distorted. Harmony Creek, once a small, insignificant town, found itself thrust into the national spotlight, its idyllic image shattered beyond repair. The verdict was inevitable, a necessary but ultimately unsatisfying conclusion. Amelia's guilty plea, while expected, did little to soothe the wounds of the community. The sense of justice served was tempered by a profound sense of loss, of a future irrevocably altered. The residents of Harmony Creek were left to grapple with the aftermath, with the painful task of rebuilding a community fractured by betrayal and violence. The old clock tower, once a symbol of the town's history, now stood as a grim monument to the darkness that had engulfed them. The healing process was long and arduous. Counseling sessions, community meetings, and countless acts of support attempted to mend the broken threads of the community. Slowly, tentatively, Harmony Creek began to find its way back to a semblance of normalcy. Yet, the scars remained, a constant reminder of the events that had changed their lives forever. The memory of Amelia Hayes, the quiet librarian who became a killer, haunted their collective consciousness, a chilling testament to the capacity for both darkness and resilience that dwelled within even the most idyllic of communities. The stories of Harmony Creek became ingrained in the town's collective memory, a reminder of the thin line between justice and vengeance, between victim and perpetrator. While the immediate trauma began to recede, the unspoken understanding lingered. Conversations remained guarded, trust rebuilt slowly and cautiously. Some residents left, unable to bear the weight of the past, choosing to start anew in unfamiliar territory, leaving behind the ghosts of their shared experience. Others remained, committed to rebuilding their lives and their community. They established support groups, memorial events, and initiatives to foster a sense of unity and healing. The old clock tower, though still a grim reminder, gradually transformed into a symbol of remembrance and recovery. It stood as a reminder that even the darkest chapters of a town's history can become a catalyst for growth and transformation. But the haunting narrative of Amelia Hayes and the shadow it cast over Harmony Creek would continue to resonate for years to come. a testament to the complex and unpredictable nature of human behavior, and the lasting impact of secrets buried beneath an apparently flawless surface. The investigation's aftermath also impacted Diaz's professional life. Her superiors initially praised her diligent work, but the case's unusual complexity, the blurring of ethical lines, and the deep emotional toll on her led to internal discussions about its implications. A reassessment of their investigative protocols, a renewed emphasis on psychological support for officers, and a deeper understanding of the impact of trauma on small communities emerged from the fallout of the Harmony Creek case. Diaz's reputation was elevated within the department, but her experience also brought into sharp relief the invisible wounds of investigating such intensely personal cases. Years later, Diaz would sometimes find herself driving past Harmony Creek. The town had partially healed, its familiar charm returning. But as she passed the old clock tower, she would remember the chilling silence, the weight of Amelia's story, the complexities of a woman driven to such desperate measures, and the chilling truth that even paradise harbors hidden shadows. The case had changed her profoundly, deepening her understanding of human nature, its capacity for darkness and redemption. The memory of Amelia Hayes, a ghost etched into the landscape of Harmony Creek, would forever serve as a potent reminder of the chilling truth she had uncovered within the idyllic facade, forever altering her perspective on justice, vengeance, and the quiet darkness that sometimes resides in the most seemingly tranquil of places. Harmony Creek's story became more than a solved case. It became a cautionary tale, a haunting echo in the corridors of her mind, a legacy etched in the annals of her career. The trial's conclusion offered a semblance of closure, a legal resolution to the horrifying events that had unfolded in Harmony Creek. But the gavel's final bang did little to silence the whispers, to mend the fractured relationships, or to erase the lingering fear that clung to the town like a persistent fog. The veneer of normalcy, painstakingly reapplied, cracked under the weight of unspoken resentments and lingering suspicion. Sarah Jenkins, whose husband, the town's beloved mayor, had been Amelia's first victim, found herself increasingly isolated. While the community outwardly offered condolences and support, a subtle shift had occurred. Conversations faltered when she entered a room, eyes darted away, and the warmth of previous friendships felt distant, replaced by a cautious politeness that stung more than outright hostility. The unspoken question hung in the air. Had she known something? Had she missed signs of Amelia's growing darkness? The suspicion, though unfounded, was a weight she carried daily, a constant reminder of the chasm that had opened up between her and her neighbors. Even the children, whose innocence had been so profoundly violated, carried the scars of the events. Their games were now haunted by shadows, their imaginative worlds infused with the grim realities they had unwittingly witnessed. The vibrant, carefree atmosphere of the schoolyard was replaced by a subdued quiet, a silent acknowledgement of the shared trauma. Therapy sessions, intended to help them process their experiences, became a space for confronting not only their fears, but also the fractured relationships within their families and amongst their peers. The once strong bonds of childhood friendship had become tentative, vulnerable, marked by the unspoken anxiety of who might be harboring a hidden darkness. The local church, a pillar of the Harmony Creek community, also felt the impact. Pastor Thompson, a man known for his compassionate guidance, found himself wrestling with the community's fractured faith. His sermons, once filled with comforting words of hope and solace, now wrestled with the difficult questions of forgiveness, justice, and the enduring presence of evil. The congregants, once united in their faith, were now divided, their prayers colored by individual griefs, anxieties, and suspicions. The simple act of gathering together, once a source of comfort, now felt charged with unresolved tensions, as past friendships and alliances were tested and broken by the weight of the shared tragedy. The economic repercussions were significant. Tourism, once a vital source of income for Harmony Creek, plummeted. The once charming town, featured in countless travel brochures, was now associated with violence and tragedy. Businesses struggled, some forced to close their doors, leaving unemployment and economic hardship in their wake. The idyllic image, so carefully cultivated over the years, was irrevocably tarnished, casting a long shadow over the town's future. The whispers and the hushed conversations traveled far beyond the town limits, creating a cloud of negativity that stifled any potential for recovery. The police department, despite its attempts to reassure the community, found itself grappling with the aftermath of the investigation. While Diaz had garnered praise for her work, the case had exposed vulnerabilities within the system. The failure to detect Amelia's escalating behavior raised questions about their methods, their understanding of the community's dynamics, and the effectiveness of their communication strategies. A review of procedures was underway, leading to internal debates about training, resource allocation, and the importance of community engagement. The Harmony Creek case served as a stark reminder that even in seemingly idyllic settings, darkness could flourish undetected. Old grievances resurfaced, magnified by the trauma. Long-standing feuds within families were reopened, friendships dissolved, and the town's previously strong sense of community crumbled under the pressure. The investigation, while ultimately successful, had inadvertently exposed deep-seated divisions and conflicts that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. The quiet unity that once characterized Harmony Creek was replaced by a pervasive sense of unease, a constant reminder of the darkness that had shaken the town to its core. The narrative of Amelia Hayes, the quiet librarian who had committed such terrible acts, became a source of endless speculation and debate. Some residents struggled to reconcile the woman they knew with the monster she had become, searching for explanations that would somehow make sense of the incomprehensible. Others found it easier to demonize her, to distance themselves from the disturbing reality of her actions, to cling to a narrative that simplified the complexities of the situation. The lack of a clear and universally accepted explanation only exacerbated the divisions within the community. The healing process, if it could even be called that, was slow and uneven. Attempts to foster reconciliation and rebuild the community faced many challenges. The trust that had been shattered was incredibly difficult to repair, and some residents felt the town was beyond redemption. The scars, both visible and invisible, ran deep, affecting every aspect of their lives. The once vibrant heart of Harmony Creek was left with a profound sense of loss, a lingering unease that permeated every interaction and every social gathering. Years passed, and while the wounds began to heal, the scars remained. Harmony Creek found a new equilibrium, a fragile peace built on a foundation of caution and unspoken anxieties. The town's outward appearance had recovered, the businesses reopened, and the tourism industry, albeit slowly, showed signs of revival. But beneath the surface, the events of that fateful summer cast a long shadow, a reminder of the unseen darkness that could reside in any community. The silence between neighbors was the most telling sign that Harmony Creek had not simply moved on. The town was forever altered, a testament to the enduring impact of trauma and the complexity of human nature. The memories lingered, a persistent echo in the hearts and minds of those who had lived through the ordeal, forever changing their perception of the idyllic life they once held so dear. The unresolved tensions continued to simmer, a chilling reminder that even in the most peaceful of settings, the darkness can linger, threatening to shatter the facade of perfection. The truth, as it often does, lay buried beneath layers of deceit and carefully constructed illusions. Amelia Hayes, the quiet librarian, the seemingly harmless figure who blended seamlessly into the fabric of Harmony Creek, harbored a darkness that had festered for years, a darkness born not of sudden malice, but of a slow, insidious poisoning of the soul. Her motive, far from being a simple act of random violence, was a meticulously crafted tapestry woven from threads of betrayal, resentment, and a profound sense of injustice that had twisted her perception of reality. It began, not with the murders themselves, but with a childhood marred by neglect and emotional abuse. Amelia's parents, respected members of the community, outwardly presented a picture of domestic bliss. Behind closed doors, however, a different story unfolded. Amelia was a silent observer, a witness to their constant bickering, their simmering resentments, their cold indifference to her emotional needs. She learned early on that affection was a commodity to be earned, a privilege reserved for those who met their exacting standards, standards she could never quite attain. The emotional deprivation left a gaping hole in her psyche, a void that she attempted to fill with a desperate need for validation. She sought acceptance, not through genuine connection, but through a warped sense of control. She excelled academically, becoming the town's quiet, unassuming star, but her achievements felt hollow, a futile attempt to fill the emptiness within. This need for control extended to her social interactions, where she meticulously cultivated an image of quiet competence, hiding her deep-seated insecurities beneath a veneer of politeness and reserve. The catalyst for her descent into violence was a series of seemingly insignificant events that, when viewed through the lens of her distorted perception, became acts of profound betrayal. The first was the election of Mayor Jenkins, a man she saw as arrogant and condescending, someone who embodied everything she despised about the town's superficial facade of prosperity. She perceived his success as a personal affront, a testament to a system that valued outward appearances over genuine merit. His friendly demeanor, which others interpreted as affability, she saw as a mask, a calculated performance designed to manipulate the town's residents. Then came the incident with Sarah Jenkins, the mayor's wife. A seemingly minor slight, a casual remark that others would have dismissed, became, in Amelia's mind, a deliberate act of cruelty, a further confirmation of her belief that she was perpetually undervalued and disregarded. This incident solidified her resentment and anger, fueling her twisted sense of justice. It became a pivotal moment, pushing her over the edge, confirming her conviction that the world was inherently unfair, and that those who thrived were undeserving of their good fortune. Amelia's actions were not spur-of-the-moment decisions. They were meticulously planned, each murder a calculated act designed to send a message, a twisted attempt to right the perceived wrongs she had suffered throughout her life. Each victim, in her warped worldview, represented a symbol of the injustice she felt so acutely. Mayor Jenkins, the epitome of success and social standing. Sarah Jenkins, who she felt had further disregarded her. Pastor Thompson, whose unwavering faith represented a hypocrisy she couldn't reconcile. Even the children, whose unbridled joy and innocence served as a constant reminder of what she had never possessed. The meticulous nature of her crimes reflected her personality, her precision, her planning, her absolute dedication to achieving her twisted objectives. The selection of victims, the timing of the attacks, subtle clues she left behind. All these elements spoke of a mind that was simultaneously methodical and deeply disturbed. It wasn't simply a case of uncontrolled rage. It was a meticulously crafted performance, a drama unfolding according to a script she had written herself. Her motive wasn't simply revenge. It was a warped sense of social engineering, a belief that she was acting as a righteous agent of change, cleansing the town of its hypocrisy and superficiality. In her mind, she was enacting justice, not perpetrating violence. The idyllic image of Harmony Creek, which she perceived as a facade masking a world of cruelty and indifference, became the target of her distorted sense of righteousness. She saw herself as a necessary evil, a dark angel bringing retribution to those who, in her view, had wronged her and others like her. This distorted sense of self-righteousness was a significant factor in her ability to evade detection for so long. Her quiet demeanor, her unassuming nature, and her deep understanding of the town's social dynamics allowed her to blend seamlessly into the background, hiding in plain sight. She was the perfect predator, inhabiting the very community she sought to destroy. The investigation itself revealed not just the killer's motive, but also the community's complicity in allowing such a terrible event to happen. The unspoken resentments, the unaddressed grievances, and the deep-seated social divisions within Harmony Creek provided fertile ground for Amelia's twisted narrative to take root. The town's apparent perfection masked a deeper sickness, a failure to acknowledge and address the underlying tensions that festered beneath the surface. Amelia's trial was not merely a legal process. It was a mirror reflecting the collective unconscious of Harmony Creek, exposing the town's failures, its vulnerabilities, and its inability to confront its own darkness. The silence that followed her conviction was not the silence of peace, but the heavy silence of unresolved trauma. A silence that would linger long after the final gavel fell. The wounds inflicted by Amelia Hayes ran deep, penetrating the very soul of the community, leaving behind an enduring legacy of suspicion, fear, and the chilling realization that the monsters among us often wear the most ordinary of masks. The seemingly idyllic facade of Harmony Creek had been shattered, revealing a darkness far more profound and unsettling than any single individual could have ever created. The town's healing process, if it ever truly began, would be a long and arduous journey, a testament to the enduring power of trauma and the enduring mystery of the human heart. The courtroom was hushed, the air thick with a silence far heavier than the weight of the gavel that had just fallen. Amelia Hayes, her face pale and drawn, showed no outward reaction to the judge's pronouncement. Guilty on all counts. But the silence wasn't the silence of resolution. It was the pregnant pause before a storm. Justice, it seemed, had been served, but the question lingered. What kind of justice? And was it truly served at all? The trial had been a spectacle, a public airing of Harmony Creek's dirty laundry. The idyllic facade had crumbled under the weight of testimony, revealing a community riddled with unspoken resentments, long-held grudges, and a pervasive sense of disillusionment. Amelia's meticulously planned murders, shocking as they were, had inadvertently become a catalyst, forcing the town to confront the darkness it had so diligently ignored. The evidence presented, irrefutable, devastating, painted a picture not just of a killer, but of a community complicit in its own downfall. The prosecution had focused on the methodical nature of Amelia's crimes, highlighting the chilling precision with which she had targeted her victims. Each murder, they argued, was a calculated act, a twisted attempt at retribution for a lifetime of perceived injustices. The defense, on the other hand, had attempted to paint a portrait of a woman driven to madness by years of emotional neglect and social isolation. They had presented a sympathetic narrative, attempting to evoke empathy from the jury, but the sheer brutality of the crimes overshadowed any attempt at mitigating circumstances. The jury's verdict, while swift, was not without its complexities. While they found Amelia guilty, the unspoken question in the room, and indeed in the hearts of many residents, was whether she was truly responsible for her actions or a product of a deeply flawed system that had failed to nurture her and address the underlying issues that festered within the seemingly perfect community. The trial had, in a way, become a referendum on Harmony Creek itself. In the aftermath, the town was left grappling with a profound sense of unease. The arrests, the trial, the conviction. These were tangible milestones, concrete steps toward resolution. But beneath the surface, a deeper malaise lingered. The sense of safety, the once unshakable belief in the town's inherent goodness, had been irrevocably shattered. The smiles felt forced, the conversation stilted, the air thick with unspoken anxieties. The police, meanwhile, faced the aftermath of their investigation, a process that had stretched them to their limits, both professionally and emotionally. They had pieced together Amelia's life, uncovering the silent suffering that had fueled her descent into darkness, unearthing the secrets that had been carefully concealed beneath the town's polished veneer. The investigation had revealed not just a killer, but a systemic failure, a failure to recognize and address the deep-seated societal problems that had allowed Amelia's rage to fester for so long. The media, naturally, had a field day. Harmony Creek, once a picture of idyllic small-town life, became the epitome of societal dysfunction, a cautionary tale of hidden darkness lurking beneath the surface. The national coverage amplified the town's collective trauma, turning their private grief into a public spectacle. The residents, already grappling with the emotional aftermath of the murders, now had to contend with the intense scrutiny of the outside world, their grief laid bare for all to see. Even Pastor Thompson, a man known for his unwavering faith and calm demeanor, found himself struggling to reconcile the events with his belief system. He had spent countless hours counseling the grieving families, offering comfort and solace. But even his faith seemed tested by the sheer depth of the community's collective trauma. He began to question the nature of good and evil, the complexities of human nature, and the very foundations of his beliefs. His sermons, once filled with uplifting messages, now reflected a profound sense of disillusionment, a grappling with the harsh realities of a world far more complicated than he had ever imagined. The town's healing process, if it could even be called that, was slow and arduous. There were support groups, community meetings, and attempts at reconciliation, but the scars ran deep. The children, particularly, bore the burden of collective trauma, their innocence tarnished by the brutal reality of the murders. Their games were quieter, their laughter less frequent, their trust in adults irrevocably shaken. The town's collective innocence had been lost, replaced by a haunting sense of vulnerability and a deep-seated fear of the unknown. The legal system, too, came under scrutiny. Was Amelia's sentence truly justice? Was life imprisonment sufficient punishment for such heinous crimes? The question resonated far beyond Harmony Creek, sparking discussions about the nature of justice, the role of societal factors in criminal behavior, and the limitations of the legal system itself. The trial had become a microcosm of a larger societal debate, highlighting the complex interplay of individual responsibility and systemic failures. Years later, the scars of the events still remained visible on the landscape of Harmony Creek. The quietude was not a sign of healing, but rather a testament to the collective trauma. The flowers planted in memory of the victims served as poignant reminders of the lives lost, the innocence shattered, and the enduring legacy of fear. The town's identity was irrevocably altered. What had once been a symbol of idyllic perfection became a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder that beneath the surface of even the most seemingly perfect communities, a darkness can lurk, waiting for its moment to emerge. The resolution, if it could even be called that, was a complex tapestry woven from threads of guilt, sorrow, fear, and a lingering sense of unease. Justice had been served, perhaps, but the true cost of that justice remained unclear. The community grappled with the aftermath, attempting to rebuild, to heal, but the shadows cast by Amelia Hayes' crimes would continue to stretch long into the future, an enduring testament to the enduring power of darkness and the fragility of human innocence. The idyllic image of Harmony Creek, once a symbol of small-town perfection, was irrevocably tarnished, forever bearing the weight of its hidden darkness and the lingering question, was justice truly served? Or was it merely a temporary reprieve from a deeper, more enduring malaise? The answer, like the town's future, remained uncertain, shrouded in a silence that held far more than just the absence of sound. The years that followed Amelia Hayes' conviction were not easy. The wounds inflicted upon Harmony Creek ran deep, far deeper than the superficial cuts of grief and loss. The community, once a picture of idyllic small-town life, was scared, its veneer of perfection shattered, revealing the raw nerve endings of unspoken resentments and long-buried traumas. The silence that had followed the verdict was not the silence of peace. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of collective trauma, a shared burden borne by every resident. The initial aftermath was a blur of funerals, counseling sessions, and hushed conversations filled with a mixture of disbelief, anger, and profound sadness. The children, especially, were profoundly affected. Their games lost their innocence, replaced by a somber quietude. Their laughter, once bright and carefree, became infrequent, muffled by a collective fear that clung to them like a shadow. The adults, too, carried the weight of the unspoken, their conversations stilted, their smiles strained, their trust in one another irrevocably shaken. But even in the heart of such profound sorrow, the seeds of resilience began to sprout. The initial shock and despair gradually gave way to a hesitant, tentative hope. The community, battered and bruised, slowly began to confront the darkness that had festered beneath its seemingly perfect surface. This process wasn't swift or painless. It was a slow, arduous journey marked by missteps, setbacks, and moments of profound doubt. Pastor Thompson, his faith tested but not broken, played a crucial role in this healing process. His sermons, once filled with traditional pronouncements of faith, now reflected a deeper understanding of human frailty and the complexities of good and evil. He began to address the systemic issues that had allowed Amelia's rage to fester for so long: the social isolation, the unspoken resentments, the lack of community support for those struggling in silence. His words offered not only comfort but also a call to action, a challenge for the community to address the underlying issues that had contributed to the tragedy. Support groups sprung up organically, offering a safe space for residents to share their experiences, to express their grief, and to confront the collective trauma they had endured. These weren't just therapy sessions. They were a communal act of healing, a testament to the enduring power of human connection. In these intimate settings, the unspoken resentments began to surface, revealing a complex tapestry of hidden grievances and long-held grudges. The town council, initially paralyzed by the weight of the events, eventually began to address the systemic failings that had contributed to the tragedy. New initiatives were launched to improve mental health services, to foster a stronger sense of community, and to create a more inclusive and supportive environment. Community gardens were planted, not just as a symbolic gesture, but as a practical step towards rebuilding and creating a more vibrant and connected community. The media, having initially feasted on Harmony Creek's misfortune, slowly shifted its focus. While the story of the murders remained a cautionary tale, the narrative began to shift from one of societal dysfunction to one of resilience and healing. Stories of community initiatives, of individuals finding strength in adversity, and of the town's gradual recovery began to dominate the headlines. This change in narrative was crucial. It allowed the residents to reclaim their story, to shift the focus away from the darkness and towards the light of their collective recovery. The children, too, began to find a path toward healing. Special programs were implemented in the schools, providing them with a safe space to process their trauma, to express their feelings, and to rebuild their sense of trust in adults. Art therapy, play therapy, and group counseling proved invaluable tools in helping them navigate the emotional aftermath of the murders. Their games slowly began to regain their innocence, their laughter becoming brighter, their trust in the community gradually restored. The healing process wasn't linear. It was punctuated by moments of regression, of renewed grief, and of setbacks. But the community, spurred on by the strength of its collective spirit, persevered. They learned to confront their demons, to address the underlying issues that had contributed to the tragedy, and to build a stronger, more resilient community in the wake of devastation. The final scenes of the narrative paint a picture of cautious optimism. Harmony Creek was not the same. It bore the scars of the past, the memories of the lost forever etched into its collective consciousness. But it was also a community transformed, its spirit strengthened by its collective ordeal. The flowers planted in memory of the victims served not just as a somber reminder of the tragedy, but as a testament to the resilience and enduring hope of the human spirit. The annual memorial service, initially a somber affair, transformed into a celebration of life and remembrance. It became an opportunity for the community to come together, to honor the victims, and to reaffirm their commitment to healing and moving forward. The quietude that once filled the town was no longer the silence of trauma, but the quiet hum of a community rebuilding, of lives being rewoven into a stronger, more vibrant tapestry. Harmony Creek's story became a poignant testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. It was a story of darkness, of loss, of collective trauma, but it was also a story of resilience, of hope, and of the ability of a community to overcome its deepest wounds and rebuild its shattered innocence. The journey was long and arduous, but the final chapter was one of cautious optimism, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the enduring power of hope in the face of adversity. The future held uncertainties, yes, but it also held the promise of a brighter dawn. A dawn forged in the crucible of tragedy. A dawn that testified to the community's unwavering resolve to rebuild, to heal, and to emerge stronger from the shadows of the past.